OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
All right, let's do this. It's Tuesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Eoin with you all the way through until 10 this morning. Get in touch. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Owen, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ger.
Welcome home. You spent the weekend in the company of celebrities and watching top-class football.
Yes, indeed. In the company of celebrities. Met our own, I can call him that, Graham Hunter, before the Barcelona game on Sunday in Barcelona, of course. And can we call this the worst Clasico of all time? Is this like the buying stocks at its lowest point and trying to ride the wave up to the top? Is that what Sunday's game was?
I don't know. So most people probably didn't actually watch that much of it. I flicked over and flicked back and flicked over and flicked back and missed the last 3 minutes of excitement, the stoppage time excitement. Was it good? Was it not good? Was it not good to see them go crazy, or was it full? How did you get tickets? Was it easy?
It was easy. It was very, very easy to get tickets. 86,000 people in the new camp on Sunday, so low for a Clasico, but I'm trying to think, is it possibly the most populated stadium I've ever been in? Probably is, because I hadn't been to a game in the new camp before, and I haven't been to an American college football game, so probably is up there, 86,000 people. But Barcelona are not very good at football, it turns out, at the moment, and it leads to this strange situation where you're kind of urging them on just to ensure that you get the very best version out of what you're seeing in front of you. But it's also kind of fascinating because you know what you're seeing is the first chapter in the story that will be written of Barcelona's next great generation, where Ronald Koeman is the villain that presided over a terrible run of form, which may lead to them getting knocked out of the Champions League group stages in a few weeks, who knows, and may lead to them with their lowest ever finish in quite some time at the end of the season as well. And eventually the club will come good and everything will be rosy in the garden once again, but that time is not now. That's probably the most obvious statement you're going to hear this morning.
And were the Wunderkinding?
Two of the three, the three being Fatty, Gavi and Pedri. No Pedri, unfortunately, at the weekend. The kid has aged 50 years in the space of 18 months and has played 1 billion games over the course of last year, so he's already started to pick up injuries. He wasn't available. Fatty was bad. It's probably harsh to say that, given there was a lot of other bad players around him. And Gavi was okay when he got on the ball, but it's one of those situations where you're like, is this confirmation bias that 4-yard pass he played looked absolutely sensational because this kid is going to be one of the best players in the world, or was it actually just a class 4-yard pass? It's kind of hard to separate the reputation sometimes from it, but you look around at the rest of the team and I haven't seen Frankie de Jong play in the flesh before, but this was a very underwhelming first introduction to
Frankie de Jong play against Benfica.
Oh yes, we did. Sorry,
yeah.
Very good point. I have seen him. It was probably better that night than on Sunday. He is stagnated, to say the very least, when it comes to his career. And
he got whipped off.
He got whipped off, and it was not surprising whatsoever. And the other De Jong came on. Luke De Jong is the standard player they have to spring off the bench at the moment, which doesn't really say much about them. But Koeman is a dead man walking really at this point when it comes to his tenure as Barcelona manager. Whether or not it's going to happen soon, I'm not sure. But
you saw him driving out afterwards. That video doing the rounds on Twitter.
I actually haven't seen that, but I've heard about this. It's pretty grim. Apparently, like a guy in an Arsenal jersey kicked his car.
Well, he was driving his own car. It seemed to be pretty soon after the game, and there was no cordon. It just looked like it was a badly managed situation. It didn't ever look like it was getting particularly hairy. They were leery, you would say, but not as threatening as I think some people are making it out to be. And I'm not in any way excusing what they did, but it didn't look like they were about to tip the car over or anything. They weren't really rocking. Some guy sits on the bonnet of the car trying to get a video. Oh, it's good. As opposed to this wasn't in the stands at the Olympic Stadium or the London Stadium, the West Ham fans fighting at the weekend. This wasn't the same as that. This was a bit different. It looked anyway, but not great.
No, well, driving around there is a bad idea anyway. Like I don't want to. Again, we're not going to blame Koeman for that. But before the game,
he was driving himself just after the game. You're kind of like just
give it a half an hour. Let the traffic die down, Ronald.
Well, get a company car with blacked out windows. It's the Clasico, and you've just been beaten. You know the crack.
Because
again, not blaming him, but certainly you could blame somebody at Barcelona for not saying how you get into the stadium, how you get out of the stadium today. Oh, we look after that. Don't worry. Like park at the hotel.
Yeah, and maybe travel on. I'm not sure if they take a team bus from the hotel or not, but like before the game, there was a poor woman who got caught in the same sort of situation, but lovingly had her car shaken from side to side by all the Barcelona fans, until one Barcelona fan with like a flare in his hand kind of parts the Red Sea in front of him. Is like, calm down, guys, and just starts directing the woman driving through, who was laughing her head off and was taking it very well, it must be said, despite the fact that her car was about to go into a 90-degree angle at one point. So
it was fun. You enjoyed yourself.
Beforehand it was sensational.
Was it?
Absolutely
Yeah.
sensational.
Like as football experiences go, going to the Classico is actually right up there for a lot of people.
The best ever, the best atmosphere I've ever seen before a sporting event. And once the game started, and I appreciate the irony in what I'm about to say, but as soon as it started, you're like, this is very touristy where I am right now, given I was contributing to that wholeheartedly. But before the game, just...
So they stick all the day trippers together, do they? they know exactly what they're doing. Oh yeah, can you speak a bit of Catalan for me there? Okay, you're going to the non-singing tourist section.
There was a guy beside me perusing which photo of himself in the front of the stand he would use for Instagram as the game was unfolding, and that's the sort of like that is
that was your colleague. You're travelling.
It was me.
Compadre.
I'm talking about myself in the third person here, but I guess with 14,000 or whatever available seats, you can't really blame anybody for they're not taking a ticket off a genuine fan. Put it like that. And neither was I, just to put that out there. I was very much in that category, but sensational, and it'll be better hopefully in a few years' time.
And you'll go again.
Yeah, and take a ticket off a genuine fan on that occasion.
Yeah, of course. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette with your best face forward. Their new and improved razors. Let's tell you what's going up between now and 10 o'clock. We're going to start with the performance rankings in just a second. Running through the sports pages. The GPA's chief executive, Tom Parsons, is going to talk to us about Plan B or no Plan B. Jamie Wall is going to join us at 8:30. We'll speak to him about the situation in Cork at the moment, his expectations for the hurling season, with Henry Shefflin now centre stage as the manager of Galway. A lot happened though while you're away.
Yeah, it like been. I couldn't believe this actually the other day. It turns out there's
after 8:30.
There's a new kid in town, a new contender in town.
We're talking the Republic of Ireland football team. Daniel Harris first at 8:50, Kathleen McNamee at 9:05, and then Sonny Bill Williams to play us out at 9:30 this morning. 7:37. Yeah, there isn't. You weren't here for that, were you?
No, that was Wednesday night, wasn't it? The Shefflin news. That was extraordinary. And even just, I was just listening back to the Sunday paper review yesterday and listening to Vincent Hogan talk about Shefflin. It's hard not to be considering them as a possible contender, and just give him what he brings to proceedings, and whether or not he can coax Joe Canning out of retirement.
Did he write his book?
He did.
Oh right,
yeah.
Wow, good timing.
Yeah, very good timing.
Right, at 7:37 this morning, it is time for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. Our performances was just lacked that intensity.
So, the bad, the good and the grand from the weekend sport, brought to you 24 hours later than it usually is because of the bank holiday. We will start with the bad as ever on this Tuesday morning. Proposal B at Manchester United in the red, and we're going to start with Proposal B in the red, obviously, because it failed on Saturday. Unsurprising. I think maybe people would have expected a higher number in the 50s, but I don't think the expectation was that it was going to hit 60 and that it was going to come back next year for round 2. But I guess why it's in the red this morning is that there's no guarantees of that whatsoever, that it will come back next year and that we will have some sort of second go or a second bite of the cherry next year, because we've got to realise why a lot of people rejected Proposal B, and that is because people do not want change in certain areas of the GAA. And I think that maybe the optimistic view is that, you know what, they were rejecting this on the basis that Proposal B wasn't the right sort of change, and that a few tweaks it'll come back stronger next year and everything will be fine. I'm not necessarily sure I'm buying that.
It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens, right? Because the change that was suggested at the weekend was relatively straightforward. People were complaining about aspects of it, but all of the other changes that have been suggested since involve quite a lot of gymnastics to make sure that the provinces keep their provincial championship centre stage as somehow an accelerant for teams into the All-Ireland series. It's fair to say that the provincial championships are actually one of the main reasons why Gaelic football is broken, because there's a complete imbalance in the number of games that teams play against each other. So the fact that we're being told, don't worry, change is coming, it's going to come quickly, it's going to be interesting to see where that comes from. Because if you think about, there's an interesting line from Podge Collins about he's disappointed because he felt that everybody was focusing on the flaws of proposal B, as opposed to focusing on the flaws of the status quo, which we've gone back to. So once you start picking apart the status quo, the main problem is actually the provincial championships. But now we're being told that the provincial championships is one of the reasons why this didn't get through. And it's hard to know, because there's no qualitative, why did you not vote for this? Oh, this and this. But in order of these, like, there was no proportional representation here. We didn't get like an option B star, option B1, option B2, B3, B4. Which of these would be acceptable to you? So there's just this morass of reasons why people didn't vote for it. And the next time there's a special Congress, there's a strong possibility the constituency goes from 180 to 360, and all of a sudden getting 60% of all those votes. And again, you never know who voted for. We still don't know how Dublin voted, for example, even though the Dublin footballers all came out and said that they were in favour of this, even though, like, I don't know, the self-interest in Mayo and in Galway, and I don't know how Kerry voted in the end. Did Kerry vote no? It seems like the teams who are doing grand at the moment aren't actually as interested in the lower tier counties as you should be as an organisation, if you actually believe all the stuff that as an organisation the GAA tells itself about. You know, we're about community. Actually, the county representatives seem to be about elitism and seem to be about trying to win just for their team, which that's all very confusing to me, because it's not actually the representation of what the ethos, and you know, we're Gaels, that thing. But is that right? Are we all? Is everybody there, or actually are you just like your town, your parish, your club, your county, and that's it? Because it seemed like the factional interests took over quickly in the debate, and in the end didn't actually win the debate. Right? A majority of people at Congress wanted this proposal, which you all said was, it doesn't make any sense, and still a majority of people actually wanted it. So, I'm in two minds. This should be an amber, maybe. There's a case for this to be an amber if you believe the change is coming.
Yeah, but I think that belief, I think you'd have to be very optimistic. And maybe we're just very negative this morning, but like, I think that you made a very important point in the middle there, which was that this was a special Congress in more way than one. It was a COVID Congress, and it allowed for, I guess, the number to get up to beyond 50, because there was just less people to convince, fewer people to convince, and next year will be harder for sure when you have that full 300 to 400 people. I think that's a really vital point that maybe was overlooked in the build up to it, that this was a golden opportunity because of the amount of people actually voting on it. And we know that how much of a barrier the volume of delegates has been in the past to change that would have seemed like good change for the organisation. It's really interesting then as well on the level of the provincial championships that there was a pussyfooting around the failure of the provincial championships over the last couple of years, with the exception of the Ulster Football Championship. The Connacht Football Championship has been grand at its best, but the Leinster and Munster Football Championship have, by and large, for the last 10 years, been very, very bad. And the main reason why football is crap at times for a long part of the summer, it's the main reason why we will have hurling rather than football on our screens for the vast majority of next year's championship. The fault of that is at the door of the provincial championships. Like, it is their fault why football is bad in the height of summer. And maybe we try to appease the provincial councils a little bit more by saying, oh, no, there'll still be importance for the provincial championships when they're moved to the start of the year. But in reality, it should be, well, at least the provincial championships are still happening. At least you are still getting people through the gates, because those are the games that are holding football back from going to the next level, from exploding. And yes, back at that, you could say, well, you can't take away the local rivalries from Gaelic football. The best local rivalries we've had have, by and large, been between teams of the same standard in these provinces. The Ulster Football Championship has been great because it has been packed with Division 1 teams. The Kerry and Cork rivalry was fantastic when Cork were the second or third best team in the country, aka a Division 1 team. The same goes for the Mayo, Galway, Roscommon triangle. And Leinster at the moment, generally crap because Meath and Kildare have been yo-yo teams into Division 1. So this all plays into the idea that putting teams together of a similar standard would have been the best way to get the most out of the summer, rather than judging things solely on geography. And yet it seems that we are bowing down to the provincial championships and trying to find a format that makes them happy, rather than facing up to the facts that the provincial championships have held this whole thing back for at least 10 years.
I think it's even longer than that. Like the qualifiers came in to give people a second chance, because it was too many training sessions and too expensive to build inter-county teams up to that end of year, one game knockout, away you go, and then the back door comes in, and the back door actually was the end of the provincial championships being that important, right? It actually was. It was the realisation that these things aren't really fit for purpose, particularly because of the imbalance. Now, because Dublin were in the chaos years in the noughties, that was less pronounced. But once Dublin industrialised the process of finding good players, Leinster has disintegrated. And there was only, Will O'Callaghan pointing this out, there was only one voice from Leinster, from the floor, that went to stoop for Proposal B, even though Proposal B actually would offer all of the counties in Leinster a massive opportunity to jump forward by playing games in the summer. It's like, what are we trying to fix here? Like, I think there's a recognition. Everybody, we all want change. Yeah, we want change. Yeah, definitely. Just don't want this change. Okay, well, you had you could have put somebody forward for the committee. I have no doubt. Everybody in that room would have had the opportunity and the political nous to find a way to recommend somebody to go and sit on John Horan's committee. Went off and took about 18 months to come up with their proposals. Looked at everybody's proposals properly, and then put these two forward 18 months ago. And there's been like 3.5 years of time to debate this. So all that stuff from the floor, it was a Donegal like, we need more time to debate this one. That's a stalling tactic.
Kerry said that as well.
All stalling tactics, because
well, Donegal made the point that you can't have Division 1 against Division 1 teams against Division 4 teams.
You wouldn't do that in your own competition. It's like, that's exactly what happens in the provincial championships that you're all desperately trying to protect.
It genuinely feels like the main point against Proposal B, the main reasonable point against Proposal B, was the thing about the sixth team in Division 1. Like, I don't agree with that, but I could see why an intercounty manager like James Horan would say that. I can understand that, but it's it seems that if we're actually looking for logical reasons why this didn't pass, then that might actually have been the one. And it is ridiculous to think that is the one thing that held the whole process up.
It's hard to know. It's very hard to know. Again, I go back to the why did you vote no? Oh, because of this. Okay, well, if we fix this, are you going to vote yes? No. Still going to vote no because actually, and then you chisel away and you get to the real reasons. Is like, actually, our power block is in this group, and this group have decided that we don't believe that. So, like, we spoke to as many of the provincial councils as we could. We didn't hear from Connacht on the record exactly why they were against it or what the rationale behind it was, but we will now over the next while. All of those people who voted no are now being tasked with coming up with a better version that somehow manages to solve the problems and to go back to them. The problems are that teams don't get the same number of games. We have a completely lopsided competition. So to fix it, you need to give everybody at the start of the year the same number of games, ideally against opposition of their own standard, with the opportunity to progress up and down the ranks. You can completely break the teams into 3 tiers, like every club championship is in the country, and then not give everybody the opportunity to win Sam Maguire. That's fine, but that's not what the players wanted, and I think you've got to listen to the players when it comes to that. But if that's what you're going to do, then go for it. Go for a senior, intermediate, junior, like the women's football is, and let's see what happens. And maybe that is and maybe there is 3 tiers, and the second tier is the Tailteann Cup, and the third tier is whatever, and that's the way out of this. But retain a place in the All-Ireland Wildcard Series for the winners of the Provincial Championships, because the winners of the Provincial Championships are going to be Dublin, Kerry, Mayo and another, who is going to be a Division 1 team anyway. Yeah. That's what's going to happen.
I think 2 things are going to happen over the next little while. I think first of all there's going to be a big power play from the provincial councils to try and get more games in the best time of the year.
You see the provincial round robins. Let's have a load of provincial round robins to make sure that all the weak teams. So we're going to bundle the weak teams together in a provincial round robin that's going to not actually then have any bearing on whether or not they make progress in the league, and so ultimately means nothing, because it's for the right to get hockeyed at some point.
Hey, this competition is bad, let's have more of this competition.
Yes.
is essentially the answer there. So I definitely think that is going to happen over the next little while, and people need to be on high alert to that happening, because that is borderline a power grab which just cannot be allowed to happen. It will destroy this thing even further. The second thing that I expect will happen is that when this change does come, because it will happen, I'm not confident it's going to happen next year, maybe not even the year after, but when this change does happen, this kind of overhaul happens, it will actually look a lot like Proposal B. It will be teams having the same amount of games or guaranteed number of games in the summer months, and a movement in between divisions, which is the centre point of Proposal B. That is 80% of what Proposal B is, whereas the whole argument became focused on the other 20%. Oh, Team 6 doesn't get in. We should have just got that 80% over the line and then worried about the 20%. But no, we got so frustrated and so distracted by the other 20%. And probably 20% is probably giving that a generous figure. It's 10% of what it was. Proposal B's thrust was guaranteed games in the summer. And that is what everybody will want when this new change comes in, however it's going to be dressed up.
I think that the fact that this was kind of orphaned, Proposal B was largely orphaned, it didn't have somebody explaining it from the start, meant that anybody who came late to it, which was the majority of people, because this was not being spoken about a month ago, the majority of people woke up to it and they bought the argument that the All-Ireland Series was the All-Ireland Championship, that the knockout was the All-Ireland Championship, which was the most frustrating part for me, because very smart people were like, oh, but they're not in the All-Ireland. But hang on a second. On the first day, the first round of games, every team is in it, and every single moment has consequence for whether or not you are going to qualify. And so therefore every game's a championship game. So this whole notion that the 6th team and the 7th team and the 8th team weren't in the championship was actually bollocks. It was complete bollocks, because the first round of games is the All-Ireland Series. It's just that it hadn't been marketed properly, it hadn't been explained properly. Nobody actually sat down and went, no, hang on a second. Round 1, week 1, match day 1, that's the All-Ireland Series. So we get to a point where we eradicate all these other teams before we get to the knockout stages. You either qualify or you don't. But you had your opportunity to qualify. You had 7 games to qualify. And the other thing is, there's no knockout games. Well, actually, week 5 of the league becomes a knockout game, because if you lose, you're out. Or if you lose, you're in a relegation dogfight the next week and you're going to have to win that game, which is like a second tier championship to try and stay in. But you also have this massive opportunity. 5 out of the 8 teams qualify. It's the best division to be in, because you've got a 5/8 chance of qualifying for the knockout stages. That bit never was explained properly. No one championed that. No one explained that. No one explained the weighted likelihood of the team from Division 4 actually, or Division 3. Like, Derry would have been the champions in Division 3 last year in the league. Derry were brilliant.
Yeah,
a real coming force. Yeah, and even how the wildcard weekend would have been amazing. And if you need to tweak it, so the 6th place team, who by the way everybody's going to think the 6th place team doesn't deserve to be there because they've lost 4 games. They're going to have a losing record. And you're like, oh, that team with a losing record is the 6th best team in the country. They're actually not.
And also the lack of jeopardy that would have brought to the top tier as well, having
zero jeopardy
in there.
Completely pointless. It ruins the whole thing.
You want to get relegated or you get through. So I didn't understand that either, and it was incredible to as you said, smart people who were actually saying that, and maybe that is a failure of how this thing was marketed, and maybe it's just a bad sort of coincidence that John Horan's term was up, and that if he was still there, that maybe there would have been an extra push from him personally, because it seemed that he was in favour of this. And I'm not blaming anybody or anything. Like, in fairness, Larry McCarthy and Tom Ryan came out in favour of this last week. It might have helped that they come out in favour a bit sooner maybe, and actually thrown their weight behind it, because it did feel that there were a lot of entrenched positions last Wednesday before they'd actually spoken. So
it's very interesting though, they did come out in favour of change, and they did speak immediately afterwards about how there's now a strong belief in the room that there's time for change. So this president's legacy is going to be getting change for the football championship through in the next, he's got 2 years left, so is it 2 and a bit, whatever the length of period of time it is. And already, so the GPA, we're going to speak with Tom Parsons a little bit later on. Tom Parsons is saying this needs to be on the clár in February, which means that we've got the quiet months of the year, in fairness, to talk to everybody, to listen to their issues, to do that thing that Bertie Hearn said, staring at the wall and letting everybody get their ideas out. Like, I think that has to happen, or it'll be a special clár next year, right? And think about it, we catapult forward 12 months, and then it's like, oh, it's too close now to the next season for us to actually get this in, so we'll bring it in for, what year are we talking about then? 2024, at which point another 2 years of prime playing time for some of our best young footballers from counties who are outside the top 5 counties are ruined. That's the bit that, like...
Yeah, it's frustrating, and those teams that voted against it or gave an open vote or kind of held back a sort of view on this all have let down their players. I think that's fair to say. Like, especially some of the players at the top tier. Like, you look along and say the Atlantic coast counties like Mayo, Galway and Kerry, two of which voted against it. One didn't pose a position. Like, I would say that the players of those three counties are pretty disappointed with how they've been represented, which is frustrating from their perspective, to say the very least, because I think all those three counties would have stood to benefit from this process next summer, which would have been more games against better opposition in the best time of the year. But look, it's happened now, and maybe there's the fact that it did get over 50% is what we should be looking at and saying, you know what,
everybody wants change. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Let's get it done, and that's the challenge now for the administrators, is to get this done quickly and not just sit and say, oh look, we have to give ourselves 12 months, because 12 more months is going to be another provincial championships. And bear in mind, this year the provincial championships is going to be in summertime, and so the best teams are going to hockey the worst teams, and a load of those worst teams, best players won't play because they'll be like, no one cares about this. So maybe we all forgot about that, and we needed that, and we're all going to remember it a bit more this time. Right. So a reminder, of course, that every week we do the performance rankings, and we give you the chance to win a Gillette starter pack. All you got to do to enter is get in touch with your suggestions. Who should be in red, who should be in green, who should be in amber. Shout out so far, Jack Carty, green, good. He with Sexton has been our best out half this season. Farrell needs to add him to this November squad as he has experience of a World Cup. We need his age profile. It's good. He's not in our green, but Connacht are. We're going to get there in a minute. Man United in red.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was a pretty obvious one to fire into red, and it does seem that the mood has changed even more so than just the result at the weekend, because of course there have been bad results under Solskjaer. You definitely think about the Tottenham 6-1 last season, but it does feel that maybe there is a little bit more leaking out of Old Trafford, a little bit more leaking out of the dressing room, and a little bit more of a movement towards this idea that Solskjaer's time as Manchester United boss is up. For two reasons. First of all, because the Antonio Conte camp seem to be pretty happy to consider Manchester United now, assuming he can persuade the board that he won't take over the club and won't run things on a tyrannical level too much. And then there's also what people are saying from within. So there's been a couple of interesting pieces written over the last couple of days. James Ducker in the Telegraph caught my eye anyway. So you've got a situation here where it seems Eric Bailly has been questioning Solskjaer quite a bit, very, very unhappy with how ahead of the Leicester game a half-fit defender, aka Harry Maguire, who'd only trained once, gets in ahead of him.
How'd that work out for Solskjaer as well?
Not exactly amazing. There's been one senior player asking why Donny van de Beek has been continuously passed over. I like how there's been a lot of love for Van de Beek within the dressing room. Others have questioned why Jesse Lingard has been frozen out, and why others such as Nemanja Matic have been used so sparingly when the form of so many regulars has been poor. So there's this sense within the dressing room, it seems, from the leaks that are going to the press, that Solskjaer shows favouritism to certain players. Obviously, picking the same team from Atalanta to Liverpool doesn't help Solskjaer whatsoever in that. So I think that's probably fair criticism, even if it is coming from players with vested interests who want to get onto the pitch. One source said, you won't find a player who doesn't like Ole on a personal level. He's a nice guy, but we're at a stage where players have lost trust in his tactics and lost trust in his selections. And I'm not sure if you've seen that video that's doing the rounds after one of the Liverpool goals the other day, and he just got Cristiano Ronaldo going like this, doing the classic manager's hand-waving thing, and I'm like, that is a Solskjaer impression. That is your star player taking the piss out of you. Like, that is... Things have started to unravel now on the pitch, where you're starting to see this disconnect between the players and the manager, despite the fact that he's a very, very nice guy. In this Ducker piece, it says Ronaldo's been left alarmed by the dramatic slump in form and the lack of understanding with Mason Greenwood has not gone unnoticed by teammates. Greenwood has been one of United's better performers this season, but Ronaldo has struggled to strike up a rapport with him on the pitch and has been exasperated at times by some of the strikers' decision making. Like, to be honest with you, this kind of goes a lot deeper than Solskjaer. I know it's the manager's job and the buck stops with him and it's the easiest thing to change, but like Ronaldo and Greenwood, and Ronaldo being exasperated by the decision making of this kid, like that's a problem. That'll be a legacy issue for the next manager who comes in. And then the last thing really was just the thing about Solskjaer's tactical acumen, the quality of coaching, and they had worked on a specific plan. They devised a plan that would stop Liverpool They'd worked specifically on the shape of the team during training during the week, and what followed, as we all know, was one of the most dishevelled student performances in United's modern history.
So they had worked on a plan?
Apparently so, and that is...
Was the plan carried out?
Well, therein lies the question, I guess. Because it's unclear from the piece.
Well, it's possible that they did carry out the plan and they got beaten 5-0. It's also possible they didn't carry out the plan and they got beaten 5-0. Do you know, so either way, it's incompetence of the plan or people not following the plan. Not a great look.
No. And
the XG was interesting. I mean, not that XG, you should talk about this too much, but like the XG was 3.6 to 2 point something or other. Like...
Yeah, Liverpool were fortunate to keep a clean sheet. I think that's what it tells us. But that's all it tells us, I think.
Well, if it was 5-3, does everybody go crazy? Because it probably could have been, and nobody would have batted an eyelid. If it was 3-1, nobody bats an eyelid that much. It's just that when things are going against you and you're at the bottom, and I don't know, we'll talk about this a little bit later on with Daniel Harris. This isn't the bottom of the barrel. That's the point, isn't it? That it could actually get much worse over the next few weeks.
Or could have done had Liverpool actually decided to keep playing. And I think Tottenham did something similar last season where it felt it took the foot off the pedal a little bit, where it could have been a lot more. Maybe not though. Like, I mean, I'm sure all of those Liverpool players would have loved to have inflicted an absolute destruction. It was a destruction, but like a record scoreline out to Manchester United in terms of a home defeat or in terms of a Premier League defeat. So maybe not, but it did feel that they definitely took the foot off the gas a little bit, because let's face it, 5-0 is an absolutely incredible scoreline anyway. Like, but it's just kind of you have to drill down deeper than the XG, obviously, and the big thing, and I'm sure people have read plenty about this, is the press, and that is probably the most damning indictment of the manager. Like, if the plan was for your right attacker to press but not your right back to follow up in the press, then there's something wrong there. But in reality, the plan was probably not for that to be the case, and the players were just disconnected a little bit or hadn't worked on it enough over the last little while. But again, you go back a week, you go back to Brendan Rodgers saying, yeah, we knew that they weren't going to press us through the middle, so we just played the ball through the midfield, and away we go, we win 4-2. And yes, that was a very basic way of explaining it, but Manchester United without the ball have got a lot worse than they were last season, and they were coming off a low base from last season. They weren't exactly Manchester City or Liverpool without the ball last season, and this season they've got even worse from that place. And sure, the players are to blame, and Ronaldo maybe was never going to be the sort of player who was going to improve the team on that level, but it's just striking how bad they were on that. And then also the concession of the first goal, and then Harry Maguire bumping into a teammate and just being generally awful as well are kind of the two things you look at and say, right, this really, really was a low ebb.
The Athletic are this morning kind of reporting that he's going to be given a little bit more time, and that might just be the Spurs game, but they're basically saying that the decision making at Manchester United is so slow, given so many different people are involved, that a quick decision is unlikely to happen. So we'll have plenty of time, I think, to talk about Solskjaer, and certainly a little time more later on in the show. Let's move on. The Ireland's women's national team in action again tonight. Why are they in amber?
Well, amber mostly to do with the pressure, I would suggest, that's on the team. When you look at and listen to a lot of the players and the way they've been speaking over the last little while, this is obviously a huge campaign for them, and every World Cup qualification campaign is massive. But after not getting to the Euros, there is a level of pressure on this team, given the quality that they have. Now, of course, Sweden are better than the Republic of Ireland. They're the number two team in the world. Nobody expected them to get anything other than to lose last week, and I guess to actually push them quite close to lose as a result of an own goal kind of suggests that they are definitely improving. But now is the time to start getting results. Now is the time to qualify for a tournament and to actually see the likes of Denise O'Sullivan and Katie McCabe play in a tournament, because I mean, these only come along every so often, and certainly when it comes to the World Cup, maybe this will be the best opportunity to see McCabe and O'Sullivan in their peak at a World Cup as well. So it brings you on to tonight's game, where they need to get a result against Finland. To lose in Finland wouldn't be a good enough result, you suspect, at this point. And that's a different sort of pressure. I think the pressure maybe in the last campaign, in an overall sense, was to ensure that results were getting better, to ensure that a team like Germany could represent a couple of staging posts where, okay, from one game to the next, you were going to get better against a Tier 1 nation. Yes, the Ukraine result was desperately disappointing, and essentially it was a game that Ireland should have won, and they should have made it to the Euros. But I think there was maybe, when you zoomed out of it, a little bit of an acceptance that Ireland were going in the right direction. That direction has to result in something tonight, doesn't it? That it has to result in some sort of result. A draw you would absolutely take in Finland at this point. Finland obviously ranked higher than Ireland, so it would be an upset were they to win. But I think this notion that Ireland don't have the players to qualify just doesn't wash anymore. That this team is good enough and needs to show that it's good enough to start qualifying for tournaments.
Yeah, look, I think next summer is going to bring all that into sharp relief when Northern Ireland are at the Euros and we're not, and it's on in England, and it's going to be free to air on the BBC. It's going to be a real, we should have been there. Sorry, I'm just reading this athletic piece. It's hilarious. Lingard's continued absence, blah blah blah. You saw Lingard giving, I'm not even on the pitch, when he was getting grief from Bai, etc. Additionally, one source said that United do not play many small-sided games at Carrington, and raised the idea that Maguire in particular might benefit from such drills to improve his feet in tight situations. This bit's brilliant. The warm-up could certainly use work. During shooting practice ahead of Liverpool, only Ronaldo scored when teed up by Michael Carrick, with a number of players firing off target. When Fernandes gained an early chance, he snatched the shot wide. It's because of the warm-up. The warm-ups are shit, Ollie. What's going on? Ollie's at the wheel with shit warm-ups. I mean, come on.
This is what happens, though. I mean, like, it is like I see one of the headlines in the Telegraph is about like not wanting to shoot Bambi. I think Bambi has been torn limb for limb this morning and thrown under a bus and then beaten with a baseball bat.
United have the chutzpah to shoot Bambi is the headline. Like, is it chutzpah? Is that?
Yeah, Bambi is dead, and it's kind of grim to see, really. I mean, although that being said, the leaks that are, well, it's not leaks anymore. It is an absolute massive gaping hole in the Titanic at the moment. That is leading to all these stories coming out. But even within them all, there is this acceptance that Ollie is a nice guy, and that's the bottom line. He's a nice guy, but
he's going to have a great time back at Molde.
Yeah, there probably isn't any world in which we see him in the Premier League again, is there?
I can't see anybody giving him a job. Maybe Sunderland. They're always good for something like this, aren't they? It'd be good Sunderland till I die season. Like
it would, absolutely would. I think that it'll be like the final nail in his coffin would be if Conte does take this team to somewhere high. But like even next season with a similar squad, if there was a proper title challenge forthcoming from Conte, I think that would be bad reputation damage to him.
Won't there?
I think, yeah, I think Conte is just an outstanding manager. Like, what is the main reservation with Conte? Because it does seem that there is, like,
he wants power.
Yeah, like, what's wrong with that?
Well, Manchester United don't have anybody strong enough to say no, and they gave power to Van Gaal and Mourinho as their argument, and they left the club in a terrible situation. Like,
yeah,
Conte might not be brilliant at buying and selling players. He might just be brilliant at
moulding a squad.
You know, and see. Maybe you don't have to give him the power to buy and sell the players, but is he going to work with Darren Fletcher, who's the technical director? Is that his job? Whatever his job title is, I don't know. Like, I can see why. It doesn't seem like Manchester United have a strategy here, and none of the solutions are actually an answer long term to what the problems at the club are. If people say this goes beyond Solskjaer, and maybe it does, then how do they fix that? They're just caught in this endless cycle of, let's get a manager who is popular, let's get somebody who's famous, let's get a manager who's popular and famous, and it's certainly a compelling spectacle for all of us.
You're right about the signings. I was kind of like, so signings at Chelsea were bad. Like, there was a lot of bad signings. Just going through some of them here. Alvaro Morata, £70 million.
Did he make those? Is he, like, do you know what I mean?
This is what I'm wondering. Like, if does power involve him actually?
Was there not Michael Emenalo was the various technical directors at Chelsea?
Well, exactly. Like, I don't know for sure. I need to go back and check all that.
And see who the timing of it.
Yeah, but like,
definitely that.
But he signed Bakayoko for $40 million. He signed Drinkwater for Chelsea as well. Signed Batshuayi. Kante did arrive on his watch. It's saying here David Luiz, Rudiger, Zappacosta.
Wow.
So of course, like, I mean, if that's his track record and he did have all the power to, you know, say I want this guy and get a green light for all that, then that is obviously wrong. But there are way more cooks spoiling that broth at Chelsea, I would have suspected. And I just wonder, what does full control at Manchester United look like? I'm not sure does the manager actually want to be in charge of all those transfer dealings. That is essentially somebody else's job to at least contribute to all of that. And I just think that the overhaul that he would bring to the squad immediately is too good to turn down at this point, considering that the squad that Manchester United have now, is it better than the one Chelsea had a few years ago, 4 years ago? It probably is, but the thing is, the Premier League has just got so much better in the last 4 years as well.
I don't know. So if you add Kante to Hazard, and
yeah, Kante and Hazard were the two best players. Like, I mean, but like you look at some of Manchester United's, like would Ronaldo be better than Diego Costa? Probably, maybe not. Maybe Costa that season is just sensational, but I still think that what you have is maybe an underperforming set of attackers there. Like Mason Greenwood maybe gets into that Chelsea team. The obvious one is Victor Moses, who he turned into his starting right wing back from nowhere in that squad, and he definitely made players better. Some maybe it's not a better squad, but there is definitely a track record from Antonio Conte showing that he can make players better, and that is what Manchester United need right now, or at least to get to some of their parts.
Yeah. All right, let's move on.
The green. Well, we should mention Liverpool after Saturday or Sunday as well, because they were just absolutely sensational for 50 minutes anyway. And when you talk about managers getting the sum of their parts or more than that, I think that's definitely the case with Klopp at the moment, isn't it? Just given, even if you just distill the whole thing down to midfield, they lose Wijnaldum, no Fabinho, Thiago in the starting team, Harvey Elliott gets that really bad injury, and you just look at the likes of James Milner and Naby Keita, and if Keita had the week that he had, would in a Manchester United shirt, would he have been able to turn it around and say, actually no, I am good enough to put in a brilliant performance at the weekend? What would James Milner be doing if he was at Manchester United? And if you flip those two managers at the weekend, I mean, does the scoreline get a lot closer? I'd suspect it would do, and they were absolutely brilliant. And we've spoken so much about Salah over the last little while. I think there's no question right now that he is the best player in the world. And the thing is, when you start talking about him as one of the best players in the world, you just don't have anywhere else left to go. And it's kind of in the longer term conversation that this is where it's going to go over the next little while.
Yeah, exactly. And we can talk about that for months and months and months. We should talk about Connacht, also in the green.
Yeah, Connacht were absolutely unbelievable against Ulster at the Aviva Stadium at the weekend. A couple of intercept tries, and just perfect timing for someone like Jack Carty, as that commenter mentioned earlier on, getting snubbed once again from the Ireland squad, despite the fact that he played really, really well before the squad was announced, and all of a sudden put in another excellent performance at the weekend. And I don't know, there has to come a point where this just reaches a point where you can't ignore Jack Carty anymore, right?
I don't know.
Maybe you can't. Maybe he's the exact example of the person you absolutely can't ignore, because he had a bad game at the World Cup.
It's a heavy toll that he's paying for that one game, when the rest of the team, like, you were at the game, like, we were good for a short period in that match. The game looked like we were nearly home and hosed. And then was it his crossfield kick that kind of changes it? And that's like, so I presume it's not just that though. It must be around the squad afterwards, and the form hasn't been this good up to this point. There's definitely like a re-emergence. He's back, but definitely you think, like, wouldn't it be good for everybody to see? And this was it. We had this conversation with Brian just a couple of weeks ago. Like, how important is it for the whole squad to feel a little bit on edge, that actually my position is not guaranteed, or is it more important to get all the game time with the players who you think are going to be in your World Cup squad? Because there's not that, like, I know it's 2 years away, and I know that this is definitely something that we obsess about more than, I don't know, I'm not sure. I'm sure the coaches obsess about it too. But what do you do? Do you work every single second you possibly can on the training pitch with the players who you think are going to be in the World Cup squad? Or do you try and get everybody up to a standard so that no matter what happens with the injuries that are inevitably going to occur, you've got 6 or 7 players who can pop in and out?
Why wouldn't Jack Carty be in the World Cup squad? Like, what is the reason to suggest that this is a temporary, this kind of run of form he's on? Like, he's only 29, so
it's not an age thing. It's that they believe that the higher ceiling is Carberry and Harry Byrne.
Yeah, and maybe there's truth in that. Like, and that definitely when they've shown potential, they've shown it at a younger age. But
the only thing is that the injury profile of both of them has not settled down.
No,
and so there's a good strong chance that Jack Carty is actually in the Rugby World Cup squad on the basis of availability.
Yeah, and the qualities that he brings as well. I mean, is this kind of down as a squad that is kind of starting this World Cup cycle, rather this is kind of like a post-COVID sort of staging post almost, where it's like, this is going to be the squad that we're going to have for the next couple of years. You know, it's T-minus 2 years now, and this is it. This has to be the run-in.
It's hard to know, isn't it? Because Zebo's in the squad, so I don't know. Is he going to make it to the World Cup? He might not. I mean, obviously Sexton's in the squad. Is he going to make it to the World Cup? You kind of hope so, because we don't have anybody else who's playing as well as he is at 10 at the moment. But again, the injury profile. So it's a high wire act to balance the needs of winning now versus getting people game time and exposure against the best teams.
And even if you distill it down to Sexton in the context of this international window this November, like, I suspect that Sexton gets the best out of himself when he does have somebody breathing down his neck. And just for this window, I think Carty's form is so good where that actually would be the situation where, like, Carty form-wise is the best out half in the country right now, and he's not in the squad. And maybe you can make an argument that at the very least he should be in the squad just to have Sexton looking over his shoulder a little bit. And maybe that wouldn't be the long-term thing. Maybe come to Six Nations, Byrne and Carberry absolutely proved themselves by then that they are going to be the two guys who are going to be pushing Sexton come the World Cup.
There's not that many games.
But there isn't. But like, you got to push Sexton now. I mean, let's just get him into that maybe a little bit of an uncomfortable position within the squad, because I'm sure he thrives under that.
And Carberry and Byrne likewise. So I can definitely see the argument for it. But Connacht, I think you could have put Connacht in the amber here. One bit is that we just need to see this week after week after week. Like, the ability to absolutely annihilate Ulster, who've been going well, is brilliant, and it's really, really important that Connacht continue to make the progress. But they look like they've got a great coaching ticket. They look like they've got great recruitment. Things are going well there. Like,
it was back-to-back good weeks, you have to say, though, because I mean, on a different day they come away from Thomond Park with the win the previous week, and I don't like you can't put that defeat down to a bad performance from Connacht. So I think they have backed it up in back-to-back games. Obviously the result before that was hugely disappointing from Connacht's perspective. Andy Friend said they overtrained during the week. Maybe that doesn't happen again later on in the year, but this is a turn up for the books, that results, like the magnitude of the win. Ulster being spoken about as potentially making that step forward this season as well. I know Andrew Trimble was on Monday Night Rugby with Joe a couple of weeks ago making that point. Like, fair enough, he was cautious as well, saying we got to actually wait until March or April next year to actually see where this team ends up, but the early signs are really good. And Connacht took those early signs and absolutely destroyed them. So it was a remarkable result at the weekend, and Connacht, you have to say at this point, are going in the right direction, even though they do need to do it 3 weeks in a row now at this point.
All right. One quick shout out for the competition. If you want to be involved in the competition, you can enter on any of our platforms. Just tell us who you think should be in the performance rankings this week. Kenny the Dad says Ole Gunnar Solskjaer needs our support. We all need to get behind and support him. He'll never walk alone. So I see what you're doing there, Kenny. But look, if you want to stick him in the green, stick him in the green. It doesn't really matter to us. Every week we'll give you the chance to win a Gillette starter pack. All you got to do to enter is get in touch with your suggestions. That's this week's performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
We're going to take a quick break. We're back with the Gaelic Players Association Chief Executive, Tom Parsons.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
He's a lion, he's a Grand Slam winner, he's Ireland's leading try scorer, and now you can hear him first, exclusively on the OTB Sports app.
One of my abiding memories is having my cut opened up again as I got hit by the trophy in coppers on the dance floor.
Join Brian O'Driscoll for the best insight and analysis this rugby season.
We haven't had the usual kind of grenades from Gats, that's gone, so we're creating them ourselves.
Get the jump on everyone else. Download the OTB Sports app and turn on notifications now.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for Quick Start Insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
18 minutes past 8. I'm going to run you through the newspaper headlines. As you can imagine, all of the English papers are talking about Solskjaer. The Guardian there saying Solskjaer in fight to save United job, and the Times are saying that Antonio Conte has been lined up. Sorry, it was the other way around. Guardian says Conte's been lined up. Times say he's in a fight to do it. Ole Gunnar is the back of the Daily Mail this morning. The back of the Irish Sun. Succession. United send out available Zidane. Conte agent call as board debate Ole's sacking. So it's Eric Ten Hag, Brendan Rodgers, Conte and Zidane. I'd love to see Zidane. Just give it to Zidane at the end of the season, because we know that Zidane wants the job in France at the end of the next World Cup. So you could have arranged it. Like, you come in and just bring a little bit of your star power, stardust to us, and it's a free hit for you.
Yeah, like I think that a lot of people maybe see Zidane in the same category as Solskjaer sometimes, which is obviously totally wrong, given Zidane won a lot of Champions Leagues and Solskjaer has not done that thing. But yeah, maybe there is that sense of Zidane having the star power to kind of mould all the star power he had in that Real Madrid dressing room, and maybe that United need something a little bit different than that. I think Conte is the outstanding name on that list, regardless of how short term it might look. I think United need a plaster badly.
A short-term plaster. One quick story, just to mention this, is Damien Duff in the frame to take over at Shelbourne. That's Dan McDonald's story. Shelbourne are expected to clarify Damien Duff's intentions before committing to seeking an external replacement for departed boss Ian Morris. So Morris left, having taken them back up, took them up, took them down, took them back up, and generally regarded having done a good job. But it looked like from a couple of weeks back that everything was going different directions. Duffer not that keen originally on managing at League of Ireland level. That was what the story had been put out ages ago, but now I think with his involvement with the club, Shelbourne are keen to see if that is still the case, because they think that would be a transformative moment getting him on board. And you'd have to say it would certainly make everybody sit up and take notice. So it'll be very interesting to see exactly what happens with that. At 20 minutes past 8 this morning, I'm delighted to say Tom Parsons, the CEO of the Gaelic Players Association, is with us. Tom, obviously we saw Congress did its thing, and a slight majority, over 50%, voted in favour of Proposal B, but it wasn't enough to get the 60% required. Now that the dust has settled a little bit, what's your take on what happened? Where did the vote get lost, the votes that you needed to swing this?
Yeah, look, I suppose firstly, I think the 80% of players who really pushed for it will be disappointed. I was disappointed, and I definitely believe that even if you think change is 85% there, you have to grab it, and not wait for perfect. And, if we wait for perfect or 100%, we'll never get there. So look, definitely disappointed immediately afterwards. But, on reflection, I've been asking players since to be positive and to work on, one more push for 2023, because it was a very progressive change that was going to spark, I fully believe, spark life into Gaelic football. But there was a lot of positives to be taken from Congress as well. The fact that it won the majority, it won 51%, which in itself is a mandate for change, and that was echoed through GAA leadership and Larry McCarty and Tom Ryan. So it gives us a really strong foundation to push it on for next year. But immediately afterwards, you got to be disappointed that 80% of your players really, really wanted this, and it landed on 51%. Yeah,
and when you think about it, you really only needed about 5% or 6% of those who were wavering to come over to your side, and that would have been transformative. What do you think were the actual big blocks? Like your own county, for example, it looks like they voted no. That must have been disappointing on one level. Why do you think Mayo and Galway and what was it that was causing those counties not to get behind this proposal?
Yeah, I was surprised a lot of the stronger Division 1 teams in Donegal, Galway, Mayo, it looked like Kerry as well, voted against it. And I think that came down to a small tweak in Team 6 in Division 1, not progressing through to the knockout stages, which was disappointing, because we always said that what we need here is a leap of faith and a proposal that's adaptable, that we can tweak and we can change. And that's a small change to make to maybe alleviate those fears. So in one way, it was disappointing, but in another way, there's definitely proof in the narrative on the floor in Congress that if we take this away and not make wholesome changes and bring it back to the table at our next opportunity, that it should alleviate the concerns of a number of counties. And as you said, 51% is so close to 60%. The challenge here is that, I think we all worked really hard, not just players, but even yourselves and the media and clubs and the general Gaelic family. We worked so hard to even get that 51%. So, there's going to be a challenge even to maintain the 51% that we have, and then alleviate and make any changes that we need to make sure that we bring the Galways and the Mayos and the Kerrys and Donegals with us.
What's next then? Because you mentioned the GAA leadership feel like they have a mandate for change here. That's, I think, the single most important thing. But they were also saying that February might be too soon for us to get something back. You don't think that's the case? Yeah,
definitely not. Like, I mean, the conversation and the debate on the floor on Saturday was really good. You know, first of all, like I was actually really proud of, you know, in one way disappointed that it didn't reach 60%, but counties like Sligo, Offaly, Cork, Leitrim, Clare, like they fought really hard for their players on the floor. We need to build on that, you know. And I would have been a little bit disappointed that not more counties came out on the day and spoke publicly for it. But to answer your question, like February is 3 or 4 months. Don't tell me we can't get in a room in 3 months when we have something that everybody has said the foundation is there, and have something on the table in February. You know, my only concern would be that for February, like players play a huge role here, and they really did get in front of their county executives and were very vocal. And you know yourself, Ger, like in February, players are completely focused on the game, and we mightn't be able to get that level of engagement from players. But still, you know, I think I'd be really disappointed. I'd be disappointed. I think players would be disappointed if we couldn't bring it back on the table in February. And you know yourself, if we drop the ball on this now, and we let 6 or 7 months pass this special Congress, it loses a bit of momentum.
How does that work then, Tom, in terms of moulding the exact proposal that goes on the claw in February? Is there another task force that gets set up, or is it a moulding of the one that we saw on the floor on Saturday?
Yeah, like that's probably a decision that sits with Larry McCarty and Tom Ryan, and I'll certainly be encouraging, can we retain some of the talent that was on that task force? Because, you know, we have a task force that you know, studied and reviewed over 28 proposals. They came up with a league-based championship as something that's fundamental and would alleviate a lot of the challenges we have in the championship in terms of giving teams games. So from my perspective, I'd be really hoping that the existing task force would have the appetite to get back on board and support that, and that the GAA wouldn't start with a blank canvas in their task force. You know, I definitely don't think we need to go back to first principles here. I think we need to maybe bring in a little bit of new talent through a fixtures task force committee, and make it a key priority, and have something in December or January that we can then bring out and back to our counties and our clubs, and come back in February with just to build on what we've already created. So that would be my take on it. I'll certainly be reaching out to Larry and have done in meeting up this week to see what is the lay of the land, what is the aspirations there. That's interesting.
It's hard to know what the role of the GPA is at this point. You know, you could go completely nuclear and say, unless something happens, we're going on strike, or you can say, actually, you know what, we've been a very important part of the impetus behind this, and actually that's where this organisation needs to be. It's trending towards listening more to the players than actually having a completely confrontational relationship. Because, Tom, you still expect that there are some counties who will always be, well, if the GPA are for it, we're against it.
Yeah, like, look, I think the GPA, like, first of all, we're not an elusive organisation. Like, the GPA is the players. So every time a player, you know, rings up an executive or you know, an administrator wants to sit down, like, that is the players' body. That's us all together. Like, we elect an NEC, which is all current and past players, that steers the direction of the association, and I just serve that. So, and we need, you know, to have a borderline relationship. You know, like, I have to represent the voice of the players. The players have to reflect that. So, you know, the relationship, I think, needs that tension, but also it is a positive relationship. Like, I am really proud of some of the conversations with administrators who really fought hard for their players on the floor. And I think if we keep working with administrators and players working together, can we increase that from, you know, 5 or 6 counties really, really speaking and fighting for the players on on the floor to maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 counties. And look, maybe there's some delegates and administrators that will never see the GPA in the most positive light for some reason, but that's out of our control. And as a Players Association and body, we are the players, and we just have to focus on what's in our control and work towards making this change. Like this wasn't coming into Congress and achieving a 30%. Like we're not way off the mark. A lot of counties really listened to their players. So that is positive, and there was really good debate, and I think if every Congress had that level of debate, the association would be, will do well.
One last thing, obviously you guys were championing this from a couple of weeks back and explaining exactly what it was, and you got your players out to do that. There was no one else really who went to bat publicly on behalf of this, saying this is what we need to do. Conor Dunn, who obviously was a member of the task force, but he was an individual, no longer part of a task force because the task force didn't actually exist anymore, who would come up with it. And his work, I think, really helped to springboard the whole financial aspect of this. But what the next time we really need is somebody essentially saying, this is the consensus, we've worked hard on it, and these are the arguments for and against. Because I think, for example, the whole only 10 teams are going to make the All-Ireland was like, no, everybody's in the All-Ireland series. Like it didn't have anybody to explain it from the start. There was no marketing for it. There was no one saying, no, you're wrong about that. Here's the facts, and this is what we expect it to be. That was clearly lacking from the debate the last time. It needs it the next time if you're going to get to 60%.
Yeah. Look, 100%. And look, the provincial chiefs came out with their view, but you have to remember that's a biased view because they're protecting their provincial competition, and that's their full-time job. My role has to be unbiased because I have to represent 32 counties, 4 provinces, 4 divisions, and I'll never achieve 100% as a player body, but we have to represent what's best for all teams, for all 32 counties, and that's why it is really important that the leaders in HQ who have an unbiased view, who aren't weighted for any province or any county, really come out and try and alleviate fears with this proposal. And I do think there was some fears with the proposal. Maybe there should have been a more robust package to alleviate any fears in counties or even with provincial chairs, etc. So I do believe that will happen now, and I think the last 2 weeks has been really promising that Larry McCarthy and Tom Ryan has come out in favour for it and has really given a commitment after the Congress that A, there's a mandate for change, and B, they'll start working on it straight away. So.
And Tom, do you think there's an opportunity there then really for Larry McCarthy to cement his legacy as the GAA president who delivers change to the Gaelic Football Championship? Because we've been crying out for it now for really since the qualifiers came in and we saw the benefit of a few extra games. The whole country wants more good football in summertime for everybody. So is this a chance for Larry McCarthy to cement his legacy, do you think?
Yeah, I don't want to call out anybody's legacy, and I don't think it's about that. And I think it's the greater good here, and it's just a really, really important piece of work that is so important, not just to players, but also supporters who invest an awful lot, and our Gaelic family who invest an awful lot of time into the game. And this is really important for the association, and it's not an inter-county thing, because if our games at an inter-county level aren't thriving in the Leitrim's or Sligo's or Offaly's or or Wicklow's, we're not going to thrive at club level. There is a ripple effect. Young children around Ireland need to look up and see their county team play in the summer and be proud of that county team because they're performing, they're competitive, they have a chance of success. And that, so it's an association's challenge. So I think it's just a no-brainer that this is top of the priority for all those at HQ. It's certainly a priority for us as a Gaelic Players Association representing the voice of the players. So that's how I would frame it, as a key priority for the association rather than anyone's legacy.
Tom, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks.
Tom Parsons, the Chief Executive of the GPA, giving us his thoughts on that. You can give us your thoughts on the YouTube channel. Leave a comment there. Subscribe to youtube.com/off the ball. And anytime we're live, or if you turn on your notifications as well, we'll let you know about that. So at 8:34 this morning, a reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We'll see where that goes. We're obviously going to keep fostering the debate around this, because we do think that the opportunity to strike while the iron is hot, to get people in a room, is relatively straightforward. You just ask people for their opinions. You know, you could give every delegate a survey monkey, and say, you voted for or against. You don't have to tell us. This is totally anonymous. Why did you? What were the reasons? Give us a weighting. Was it because you believe the provincial championships need to be? Was it because Team 6? And then just understand the exact reasons why this proposal failed. And a lot of people are making the case for Kieran Shannon, again, very eloquently making the case for Division 1A and 1B. And let's tease that out. Let's hear exactly what the benefits of that would be. I'm not madly convinced on that, but I'm definitely open to being convinced. And
yeah, my initial reaction is also with that 1A, 1B. Well, the current format for the National League is better than when football was 1A, 1B basically, and this would be a huge part of it. That you are diluting essentially or making a bigger gap between some of the teams. But again, it is 100% worth teasing out. It's worth teasing out the Team 6 situation and seeing how that would look, seeing how many dead rubbers that would actually invite if you were to use last year's results. What could happen then here as well is that does the GAA completely take us in a different direction and open the floor up again to whole ideas? If that happens, and maybe that is the best outcome, it could be hard to get something back on the table by February is the only thing.
I don't think that's the best outcome. I think opening it up again is pointless, because we've done it again and again.
It is a can of worms, and also it opens the whole situation to a bit of pushback, and there will be that. The provincial councils are looking at the 51% and saying, right, how do we make that 41%?
Yeah.
Whereas Tom Parsons is saying, how do we make that 51% 61%? So this goes two ways. This is not just about convincing the few. This is about keeping everybody on side.
No.
And convincing more people.
For people who are old enough, this is Hanging Chads. This is Florida. This is George Bush versus Al Gore. And everybody came together and totally united after that, didn't they? Oh no, wait, that led to the fall of civilization. So let's wait and see exactly what comes next. I definitely felt a little bit on Saturday, in the 80s when the divorce referendum didn't pass, was like, oh my God, how is it? How has this happened? But then you remember that eventually all of the little bits and pieces that people had, all the problems that they had, fell away. And it was then, there's a rump of 30% who never want change no matter what, because they don't understand it and they don't want it. And it's the other 70% you need to bring with you to get, or 65% in Ireland, because we're a little bit conservative, that you need to get with you and go, actually there is a better world, and here's our shared vision for that world. It could be amazing. It's 8:37 this morning. Jamie Wall is an ambassador for Sport Ireland's Let's Get Back. It's a project aimed at encouraging members of the public that are anxious or unsure about returning to sport and physical activity, that it is possible to do so in a safe and secure manner. For more information, go to sportireland.ie. Jamie, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. How are you?
As a hurling man, what was your take on the civil war that football is embarking on at the moment? Are you a disinterested observer? What did you make of the whole thing?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm not a hurling man. I'm a GAA man. I played hurling and football for a long time, as you know, and do you know what? It was a weekend where I kind of felt myself looking at sport and kind of almost saying this would be easier if I was disinterested. As you know, I'm also a Man United man, and I was at Old Trafford on Sunday.
Wow.
So that was another moment where I was kind of I actually was pictured on the Sky Sports camera when the 5th goal went in. I could see the spider camera looking at me, and I was just there with my father oh no. And that's basically how I felt on Saturday as well. I kind of felt provincial councils were Mo Salah, and they were just kicking me while I was down waiting for something better to happen. So yeah, in this instance, I've tried to frame Liverpool as the bad guys. But yeah, look, you're watching it and you're kind of thinking, on Saturday before we left, I was chatting to my brother and he just looked at his phone and he said, Special Congress. And I looked at me, he's just rolled his eyes. And I was like, you're joking. He said, yeah. So no, definitely not a disinterested observer. A very interested observer. A very kind of just weary observer looking at it, you know. You're watching these, like, look, like it was all I could, but that I didn't, you know, ring you up there last week when Mr. Reynolds from the Leinster Council was on, because I watched that interview and my blood was boiling just as a person on the ground. I just couldn't believe the general kind of patronising attitude that it has been taken towards, you know, younger people within the association and people who want, you know, changes. There's a kind of a we know best attitude.
Well, let's take it away from Michael specifically, because in fairness to him, right, and while I disagree with a lot of what he said, he did give us 40 minutes of his time to explain what his position, and that I would say of a lot of people within the organisation is, which loads of people didn't bother. They didn't come on. We asked them and they wouldn't come on, and we keep asking them, and we'll keep asking them now for the next 6 months. But what could we do as an organisation to make it more representative of people who are players, who are younger, who have a different mindset to a different generation of people who tend to end up in the administrative and power-broking roles?
It's very hard. I mean, like, because a lot of younger people aren't interested in that administrative side of it. And I suppose, you know, until younger people get involved in that side of it, then we can't, you know, like, we can't be too critical, we'll say, of the people who are doing those jobs, because, like, I suppose for me, like, the GAA need to look at, I was listening to the tail end of Tom there, and Tom made a very good point that, like, provincial councils are going to come out against proposals that dilute the impact of the provincial councils. But for me, the provincial council's job actually shouldn't be running competitions. Like, I think that'll be a huge start, is that, like, the primary role of the provincial councils is, you know, the development of the games in the provinces, and, like, the competitions aren't. Whereas I think that's kind of gotten a small bit mixed up in the last number of years, where provincial councils feel like their primary role is to run their competition and everything else is secondary, you know. So like that'd be a huge start. I think, you know, there is still, and it's kind of rare to say, there is still a little bit of, it's not as bad as it was, obviously, because there was a day before where that kind of a mandate from the GPA would have actually been a negative thing in terms of getting something through Congress, and it has changed. And I suppose, look, I'm speaking from a position of being a small bit disheartened by it all, so I'm likely to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But you know what? There was 49.4% of people in that room did think, you know what, we've a problem here, and you know that's a significant number, you know. And I suppose, like, it is creeping towards getting better, you know. But you know, like, just listening to you comparing it to the divorce referendum, that was before I was born. Like, it just made me laugh, kind of thinking that is the kind of level of kind of inbuilt opposition to change that we have in the GAA. It's a very, very representative organisation of Irish life.
It is, and it's easy to become disheartened. Like, and I was definitely disheartened for most of Saturday, but then chatting it through with various people was like, actually, there is the bones of a movement here that is unstoppable. I think everybody accepts that Gaelic football is broken at the moment. Now, unfortunately, there are too many vested interests, too many factional interests, too many tribal interests, which haven't been addressed. So we probably need to sit with everybody who is selfishly going, well, how does this affect my chances of winning the All-Ireland? And say, well, if you're true to the spirit of the organisation, which is supposed to be spreading Irish culture and the Irish language, then actually that's not the question you're supposed to ask here. It's how do we increase the benefit for the most people the fastest? And that is to give everybody the same number of games.
But yeah, exactly. But even that, Ger, to be honest with you, like, that argument falls down very quickly in my eyes as a, like, you know, from a purely competitive sports point of view. Like, look, the obvious example this year, and as a, like, you know, I've got a foot in the Meath campus, Tommy Rooney well knows, like, I was originally from County Meath before I moved down to Cork. So I watched the Meath ladies this year with, you know, with massive pride, and obviously that story of, you know, going down intermediate, winning the intermediate and winning the All-Ireland, and everyone thought, like, oh, this is a massive fairy tale. But, like, the bottom line is, anyone who's been involved in Club GAA throughout the country over the last 10 years has seen this story 10 times over. You know, like, you see teams winning a junior and then bang, winning an intermediate and they're up senior and they're competing senior. And, like, you see teams winning intermediates and going on and winning a senior at club level all the time. And, like, what annoys me the most about the football change debate is it's literally the only level of Gaelic games between ladies football, camogie, hurling, and every club competition up and down the county. It's literally the only one that isn't graded properly. You know, it's literally the only one where we say at the start of the year, in you go, let's see who wins. And only 5 teams can win a championship trophy at the start of every year, max. You know, like as in you have your 4 provinces in your county. And that, for me, is ridiculous. Like in the GAA, we need to create more opportunities for, not just for games, and absolutely for games, but also for success. You know, for teams to look at their year as a success, and at the end of your inter-county career to look back and say, you know, I had opportunities for success. Every year I had an opportunity to do something that wasn't just going to be at the end of the year saying, oh, it's just great, we got to a quarter final this year. It's like that's rubbish, like, you know. And I've heard people make arguments about, you know, they've spoken about Leicester, for example, in the Premier League. But like a team in Division 4 winning the championship is not like Leicester winning the Premier League. Like, they were in the Premier League. They were in the top 20 of 92 teams to win that Premier League. It's not the same. And I think, you know, we're very good to look across the water for the example that suits our argument, but not actually look at, you know, the overall kind of overarching thing whereby, you know, you've got 92 teams in English league football, we'll say association football, and they are graded, you know, 20, 24, 24, 24, something like that. You know, like every competition in the world is tiered and graded except our great one that is lasting, you know. There was a comment about, you know, throwing away 100 years of tradition. It's not throwing it away, it's honouring it. You know, in my eyes, like, you honour tradition by moving forward. Like, you know, all you actually do is demean tradition by keeping things as they are, they were a brilliant idea. You know, provincial championships themselves, even, like, I would argue, they're a product of an era where Ireland was a lot more inaccessible. You know, you can get to Dublin now from Cork as fast as you probably would have got to Killarney 40 years ago. You know, it's a different world, and we need to move with that side of it. And I suppose that, for me, is the part of it that is most annoying, is because I don't think there's a cognizance of these new realities, and how do we move with them and create better things for everyone. Like you said, you know, taking off those glasses and those kind of what's best for me and my interest glasses, and thinking what's best overall here.
Do you think that's changing somewhat, Jamie? Like, I mean, Tom mentioned the fact that the Sligo chairperson spoke very well at the weekend. Even down in Cork, you've someone like Kevin O'Donovan who was on the show and spoke very well in favour of it. That there does, in some places, seem to be a new generation of thinkers within the GAA, and maybe that traditional representation of Irish life is starting to be chiselled out a little bit within the GAA.
And the Longford GAA chairman, like, in my eyes, actually the Longford GAA chairman on the Examiner a couple of weeks ago, he made the best points of it, because he actually pointed out the flaws with Proposal B in saying, we're not going far enough with this. And, you know, it does, and I do think it is changing. And like you said, you mentioned Kevin and in Cork, like, they have totally revamped the Cork Championships, where we've got 5 grades at the moment before you even get to junior in the hurling, and it's 12, 12, 12, 12. We played 3 group games with the club. We're into a semi-final. You know, like, it's games in a great kind of run of games and at your level. And honestly, like, over the last couple of weeks, everyone I meet when we're out training, or we're like from different clubs, is saying, God, we have a great championship now. Fair play. They did a great job with the championship. And you're kind of saying, yeah, you know, because they took the bull by the horns and they upset a few people, putting them down a grade and up a grade. And, you know, they weren't really bothered by upsetting people. And that's, you know, that kind of level of bravery, as well as, you know, forward thinking and new thinking, is what we need. Like, it was something, actually, you know, like, I was in favour of Proposal B purely because I thought it's the best of the 3 proposals on the table, being Proposal A, Proposal B, and the status quo. If you asked me, you know, like, are there flaws with Proposal B, I'd have said there are massive flaws with it. Like I said, I don't think it went nearly far enough. And what I think is kind of ironic is that, in my eyes, the biggest flaws with Proposal B were the ones that were put in there, you know, to try and get this thing going. You know, they were kind of political kind of allowances, we'll say, to get over the first hurdle of bringing change. And, you know, you're kind of wondering, thinking, you know, Jesus, like, should the next proposal just be an absolute root and branch, and just see, like, and just put these people under pressure and say, okay, you pointed out flaws like, you know, the 6th team in Division 1 versus this team in Division 4. Well, let's just go full Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. So if that was your issue, and actually make these people who are, just pointing out flaws that are obvious flaws there, actually put them on the spot and say, okay, now we fixed that flaw. Now what's your issue with this? And maybe this being rejected could be a really, really good thing. Like you said, maybe it will just mobilise people. I feel like I'm getting a small bit mobilised myself here.
Good.
Just talking about it. Like, maybe it will mobilise people to say, do you know what? We gave you a chance and we didn't even go far enough there. Now we're really going for this, But look, like I said, hopefully, because I'm looking at inter-county players, like I'm friendly with inter-county players. I'm of that age. I'm looking at guys involved with, we'll say, take Clare, for example, and I'm not speaking out of turn here because Podge was on with you, and obviously myself and Podge are very close, we're first cousins, and he really believed in this change, and like we spoke about this, and I spoke about the flaws to him, and he said, we need to get this going, and we need to start this, and if we start this, it will get better. Look at the hurling, we had the grades first, and then we got to a round robin, and now we've got this championship. And I said, yeah, that's a fair point. And he's looking at it from a point of view of they had an incredible day. I remember years ago, they won a league final in Croke Park against Kildare, and I would say that was one of their best days as Clare footballers. They got up to Croke Park at their level, and they won a competition at their level, and they got up to Division 2. And now their aim every year is, okay, how can we try and, they've established themselves in Division 2, and now it's like, right, how can we eye up Division 1 from this proper base? And that for me is that's exactly how you build something. And they've done that through the National League, and that's why this proposal had so much merit, because it allowed you to improve while experiencing success, and while ultimately you're still eyeing up that ultimate goal of winning Division 1 championships, and that's how a lot of teams have gone after it. But what it does is it provides a workable mechanism to do that, because we've been doing it the other way for a while, and what we've ended up with is essentially the same team more or less winning Connacht every year, the same one or two teams winning Ulster every year, the same team bar once every 15 or 20 years winning in Munster, and the same team winning Leinster every year. And we're ending up with a cartel of the strongest being strong and the weakest kind of just being there. I believe the term was cannon fodder, that was used a couple of weeks ago. That's what's ending up being the case, and you just wonder, can these new voices get a little bit more support? But I do think so, and like you said, like we said at the start, the GAA is very representative of Irish life, and 20 years ago, 30 years ago, was just the 80s, 30 years ago now, Jar, sorry. But that's divorce referendums weren't going through, and then in the last decade, we've passed far what would have been seen as far more difficult referendums to pass, because more people are mobilising and getting interested. So maybe this is going to be the spark that lights the touch paper.
Well, we're certainly here for the grassroots movement of young GAA members coming to the fore and making their voices heard, and we're certainly going to give them a platform for it. Jamie, we didn't even get into Shefflin setting a bomb off in the hurling championship. We must get you back on to talk about that really soon. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks, sure. Thanks for having me.
It's Jamie Wall there. He's an ambassador for Sport Ireland's Let's Get Back. It's a project aimed at encouraging members of the public that are anxious or unsure about returning to sport and physical activity that it is possible to do so in a safe and secure manner. Go to sportireland.ie for more details. We'll get to Daniel Harris in just a moment. Will Ole last until the Spurs match on Saturday evening? This is the big question that we're asking. At the moment, it looks like he will be given an opportunity to rectify matters. That's the latest coming through from The Athletic. It's slightly different from the tone in the newspapers, which seem to think that he's on the brink. And he's on the brink for a bunch of different reasons. Player unrest, in particular, the fact that there was no discernible style, or certainly nobody being accountable to the style of what they were trying to achieve. We'll get to those in a moment. What do you think's going to happen?
Well, the players at the moment seem to be the ones that are driving this thing when it comes to him hanging on by his fingernails and pushing him out, essentially. And all these leaks are coming out at a very curious time.
Yeah, Daniel Harris is with us. Daniel, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah. Do you think Solskjaer should be given more time?
No. I guess for me, I'm fairly mercenary about this kind of thing, in that when the managers, as long as there's hope that the manager can do something, then I think that you should retain them. But as soon as that hope evaporates, then bye-bye, time for the next guy. And I don't feel like I don't know anyone that thinks that Ole is now going to be able to turn this around. I mean, the performances we've seen over this season have been so almost uniformly clueless, and it's clear like he's not getting the same effort out of the players. They're not running as fast. They're not running as hard. They're not playing in as disciplined a way, and that tells you that they've given up on him as well, I think.
So the Athletic are this morning reporting that they think he will be given the opportunity to rectify matters. At least he'll be given the game against Spurs on Sunday. But it feels like... It doesn't feel like that's a long-term strategy. It feels like that's a let's buy ourselves some time and see what's out there strategy, as opposed to if we act now, we'll have to put a caretaker in, and then all of a sudden we've got no leverage when we go to talk to whoever's out there.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds totally plausible. That really, like, they should have been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks, because I would say, like, the performances against Villa, against Everton, against Leicester told you that it's unlikely that this is ever going to be as good as it needs to be, because the same things that we've been complaining about for the last couple of years are still there, but the improving has stopped. And it's at that point when the improvements stop that is when you need to worry. And it's not isolated. So if you look at all United's results individually, like, you can explain them all the way, apart from the Liverpool game, where you should never be battered 5-0 home by Liverpool. I said 17-0 when we chatted on Friday, and I thought I was joking. But it turned out that actually I wasn't joking at all, and United got lucky that Liverpool declared in the second half. But if you look at all the other performances, like, you can draw with Southampton, you can draw at home to Everton, lots of good United teams have done that. But to see them one after the other, and without any discernible level of improvement and equivalent cluelessness between the performances, tells you that things that are very significant are wrong. And it is kind of surprising that it's turned out like this and gone wrong like this in this way so dramatically. But that being the case, I mean, what is the way back? I can't see one. If someone could explain one to me, I'd love to listen, but there isn't one. I don't know anyone that thinks that this is going any way other than the way that it's going. And maybe they get a result against Tottenham, because the players are good enough to play well enough to beat Spurs, but the way that they are performing, and when we talk about Ole, obviously he carries the can, he's the manager, he picks the team, he signs the players, he picks the coaches, it's his responsibility. But the indolence and the brainlessness of the players is beneath what you would expect from any person in any job. And the thing is when that happens, even though the players are massively at fault, it's ultimately always going to be the fault of the manager, because whatever he's telling them is not coming over.
How do you explain the second half comeback against Atalanta? Because that was obviously, and look, I know it's a fairly random data point to take, given all the other data points that we have, but that would suggest that it wasn't a team who was separated from their manager, that he'd lost the dressing room at that point. They played to try and win that game, and it was...
Yeah, they're professionals. So at Atalanta, I mean, I said this on Twitter actually, so I'm not being wise after the event, but it smacked of... There was a game not that long, a couple of months before Mourinho got sacked, where United were 2-0 down to Newcastle in double quick time, and they won 3-2. Sanchez scored at the end, and they won 3-2. And it really, like, it felt a lot like that. It felt like football's equivalent of a sympathy shag, basically, where this is over, but you know what, whatever, one last time, why not? And it felt a lot like that to me, because ultimately United have a lot of good attacking players, and if they get the ball in those areas, those players can do stuff. I mean, they haven't suddenly become rubbish players, but the overall picture, the overall system isn't working, and that's the problem. It's not that sometimes they'll try. And I mean, if you're a player in that, you're thinking, well, I don't want to play in the UEFA Cup again. And they were able to find the energy and the effort to dredge a performance out themselves for 45 minutes. Although, to give them some level of due, they played all right in the first half as well. The effort was there, but sometimes it's about the effort, and sometimes it's about the effort and the competence, and sometimes about the effort, the competence and the plan. And to be good, you need all these things to be working nicely, and that just isn't the case. They managed to force a result against Atalanta because they're good. They haven't suddenly become rubbish, but Atalanta are also a team who are not dissimilar to Leeds in that they fit quite well with the way United want to play, that they flood forward all the time and they leave space into which United can attack. And felt to me like that was what we saw. It didn't look like United kind of dominated the game and dominated the ball with the kind of composure and security and confidence that you would expect to see from players that good. They just remembered how to play football because they haven't forgotten and they can still do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't sustainable.
I think the issue here is, it's a very similar one that happened to Chelsea, is that there are really good players there. The squad is very good. And if a good manager comes in who has the power to make them all put the effort in, who has also got the plan, then the potential for this side is actually still quite high. They could do damage in most of the competitions. They're probably not going to win the league at this point. But that's the problem for Solskjaer, is that there is an expectation that a good manager would actually be getting more from this team now.
Sometimes, I mean, it's not even about a good or a bad manager necessarily, because I know people are very... Solskjaer's not as good as Klopp and Guardiola. I mean, I think we know that. But to say that he's not a good manager is kind of harsh, in that where United were and where United are now, he's done a job that looked like there was a big job to take United from that team that trudged off the pitch at Anfield into a team that is now people think should be challenging for the league title. That is a good job. Now, he hasn't quite got the gas that you need to close the gap on the best of his generation. He does have the misfortune that the best of his generation are not only in the same league as him, but with United's biggest rivals. That is unfortunate. That hasn't ever previously been the case. But I wrote a piece in The Guardian this morning about it, and like sometimes you just run out of ideas. When Brad Gilbert stopped coaching Andre Agassi, he was the best coach in the world, but he said he just used all the tools in his box and needed someone else with some new tools. And that is the case. I mean, you might argue that Solskjaer, if we're going to continue to extend this metaphor, that the toolbox should be bigger and it should be more sophisticated and all the rest of it. But if you look at the job that he's done, it would have been nice if he'd have won a cup or two. He should have won last season's Europa League. I mean, he should have won it the season before that as well. But apart from that, the not won cups, there have been some great performances, there have been loads of goals, there have been some big wins, but he just doesn't have that extra bit of gas to take them on to the next level. And it's at that point that you need to think, well, you need to find a manager that does. And I personally was waiting until I was certain that that was the case, because until this season, there was always improvements. There was the things in the back of your mind that or not in the back of your mind, in the forefront of your mind, that you always saw that you felt could be better. But the team was constantly improving, so it felt like the manager, the management team were learning on the job, and they were getting better, and the players were getting better, and they were getting better at playing with each other. But it's now got to a point where not only is the improvement stopped, but they're getting worse. And at that point, you just need some fresh ideas. Whether it's someone better or not, probably any manager could come in and avoid getting beat 5-0 at home by Liverpool, because sometimes people just stop listening. And that's one of the things about Alex Ferguson that's so mind-blowing. How many team talks from Alex Ferguson do Ryan Giggs here? But he always found a way to keep it fresh, but the majority of people can't. And 3 years seems probably, I don't know what the average shelf life is for a manager at a big club or any club, but 3 years sounds like probably about average, and you just run out of ideas, and that looks like that's what's happened.
Okay, so the available candidates and the unavailable candidates, the ones who are without a job at the moment, that list is actually quite short. The people who are in jobs at the moment is actually quite longer. What do? Do you put a manager in until the end of the season who can caretake and hopefully get the squad into the Champions League, and wait then to try and get somebody who is already in a job? Or do you just take what's on the shelf at the moment and head the direction of Antonio Conte?
I would be loath to just take someone who's available because they're available. I mean, Conte's an excellent manager. He wouldn't be my choice, I guess, because I think he did an amazing job at Chelsea in that first season, but standards have gone up since then, and I don't know what his standards are, but he managed turning Victor Moses into a wing-back, for example. Like, that kind of thing probably isn't going to be enough. Like, that kind of making do isn't going to be enough to take league titles off this Guardiola team and this Liverpool team and this Chelsea team even. I actually had a conversation with Miguel Delaney of The Independent about this on Twitter yesterday, because I was saying that playing 3-5-2 more or less, or 3-4-3 or whatever, is enough for me to say no. Partly because, I mean, personally, I just don't like that formation, but not really that. It's just I don't feel that it's fitting for this squad. So Miguel pointed out that Conte wrote a dissertation on playing 4 at the back, and he's just practical, and he'll do whatever he thinks is the right thing to do. In the back of my mind, I can't help but think, well, he played 3 at the back with Inter, he played 3 at the back with Juve, he played 3 at the back with Italy, he played 3 at the back with Chelsea. And I always wonder with him if he's one of those managers who's really good at getting the best out of technically limited players, but does he have that extra bit of gas when it's necessary? And so, for example, that Inter team he did a great job in winning them the title, but he's winning them the title with players like, the players like Lukaku. I mean, I can't help but think of the players he took off United, Lukaku, Darmian, Sanchez, Young. Now, they obviously were right for the job that he wanted to do, and he had some better players than that too. Lautaro is a great player. Brozovic is an excellent player. But his style, the things that he does, to me, say someone who's able to elevate kind of like a 5 out of 10 into a 7 out of 10. And I think I would ideally want United to aim higher and be better than that. But, I mean, at the same time, the notion of United players having to come back to the dressing room and face Conte fills me with enormous joy and enormous pleasure and enormous thrill. So, I don't know. He wouldn't be my choice.
Who would your choice be then? Give us like a dream scenario. All of a sudden, you're Richard Arnold, and you're like, I've got it.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is not a dream scenario because the 2 best managers are Guardiola and Klopp, and they're busy.
You can't have them. Yeah.
I would probably take those 2. I think they could come in and do a job. Tuchel also has a job. So then you're looking at Pochettino. I would. If it was Conte or Pochettino, but you had to wait for Pochettino, I would wait for Pochettino. Although I know he's making an enormous mess in Paris, I feel like that squad that he has is not suitable for the kind of football he wants to play. And I think he could get that kind of football out of the United squad because they're younger and they're not quite as pleased with themselves, and they're trying to get good rather than trying to stay good. So I would wait for Pochettino if it was Pochettino or Conte. I would prefer Brendan Rodgers to Conte. I don't massively, as a supporter, there's something about Brendan Rodgers, even if you ignore the Liverpool thing, which I, as a supporter, obviously wouldn't ignore. As a writer, I could probably manage to ignore. It's just like there's something about him that isn't what I want in a United manager. I don't know if it's the shiny teeth or the kind of the oily. There's something about his arrogance that doesn't sit well with me in a way that Fergie's arrogance sat very nicely with me indeed. I don't know if it's that he's a nerd, and I don't think that a nerd should manage Manchester United, and it's just that kind of really schoolboy.
So it's completely irrational, is what you're saying.
I know. I agree. And having said about, he's not, I think he's unproven ultimately. He's not someone that you could be sure is going to come in and has the gas to the right level, but
If you added Fofana and Tielemans to the Man United side, I know he's not doing the buying, right? But he's definitely identifying gaps in his.
He's involved for sure.
Yeah.
He's good. I think. Don't get me wrong. I think Brendan's really good. If he'd have won the league with that Liverpool team, which he should have done, it would have been one of the great Premier League achievements. Am I certain he knows how to drill and organise a defence? I am not. But I think that he's excellent, and if they got him, that would make sense because he's someone, as opposed to Conte, who's someone who'll come in for probably 2 or 3 years. He may or may not win you a league title. And as I said before, I think winning the league title now is much harder than it was when he did it. Rodgers is someone who you would expect to come to work well with the young players to improve them. But I would go for Rodgers over Conte, and I'd go for Rodgers over Zidane. I think Zidane would be an absolutely insane thing to do. And I know that people would say, well, Zidane won this, he won that, he won the league. It just, to me, seems like more of the same as Lole. And Zidane had one of the greatest midfields ever. He had Casemiro, Kroos and Modric, and he had them at their peak. He had Benzema, he had Ronaldo, he had Bale, he had Ramos, he had Varane, he had Marcelo, he had Carvajal.
Yeah.
I mean, the drilling and the coaching, like, these are not just world-class players. They're players with unbelievable mentality.
Not great in the league. Not a great manager in the league. So I one last question for you before we go. So if you've got to wait for Rodgers and Pochettino, who are you waiting for?
If I've got to wait for both, I'm going for Pochettino. And I'm not an expert on Erik ten Hag, but I find him quite interesting and quite appealing because I guess the others I guess because I know less about him, I think he's done a brilliant job at Ajax. I've been watching his Ajax team for quite a few years now. They play lovely football. He's developing players. He's coaching them. He has a system that he can impose. And, I mean, so does Pochettino. So I guess, ultimately, Pochettino, Ten Hag would be my first choices. But I say that I obviously know much more about Pochettino than I know about Ten Hag. And I think probably, if I'm honest, one of the reasons I'm saying Ten Hag is because I know less about him, and the others aren't quite floating my boat in the way that I'd like them to. So I would sort of go for the one I knew less about, because I'd risk a 5 out of 10 for the possibility of getting an 8 or a 9 above someone I think might be a 7. So I guess my top 2 choices are the people we talked about would be Pochettino and Ten Hag, because I think Pochettino would be a really good fit for the squad. I think he'd be a really good fit for the club as well. And I would wait for him as opposed to getting Conte. But if they got Conte, I could totally see how it would go excellently, because he is quite practical and he won't be messed around. But there's just something about him that says he's sort of he's a 7 out of 10 manager. He's a finding a way to win manager. And the players that United have, they should be imposing themselves in a slightly more dominant way than I felt his Chelsea teams did. And I don't think doing the best with this United team is managing to coach players into roles that they don't ordinarily play, or trying to find a formation. It's working with unbelievable talent to get the best from them, and I'm not sure that's Conte's thing.
Yeah. All right, Daniel, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
See you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Daniel Harris giving us his thoughts on what happens next at Manchester United. It seems like there's going to be an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in charge of the weekend, Eoin. That's the way that's the latest this morning.
Yeah.
Now look, maybe he gets sacked this afternoon, and there's a caretaker manager until the end of the season. I don't know. What would you do?
It doesn't sound like that any of his potential alternatives are filling him with confidence, with 100% confidence. It seems like a bad time to be going for a new manager.
It does. So I would wait until the end of the season. That's what I would do, and then see who's available. Because you've got to make this decision not for the next 8 months, but they'll make the decision for the next 8 months on the basis of the amount of money that they're going to make on qualification for the Champions League.
Yeah, I think Conte is the option, really, isn't it? It's interesting that he has Ten Hag ahead of Conte. Given he would come with even greater question marks, I would have thought. Given he's done an excellent job with Ajax, but Conte has literally won this league.
We are going to talk the Republic of Ireland in action this evening against Finland in just a moment. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold is Keith Andrews meeting Philly McMahon at 1 o'clock. Dadcast is from 3. Packy Bonner's career retrospective is at 4, and OTB Gold with Cora Staunton is on at 6. We're talking Ireland-Finland next with Kathleen McNamee.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Liverpool fans won't want to miss our latest Cadbury FC roadshow. We're going behind the scenes at Anfield with legendary striker Robbie Fowler.
We'll also be joined by Liverpool captain and Irish international Niamh Fahey and former Liverpool midfielder and physio Richie Partridge.
It's all with thanks to Cadbury FC and their club partnerships, granting you behind the scenes access at the Premier League's biggest clubs.
Coming soon to OTB Sports social channels.
Radio and audio in Ireland has never been more powerful, more effective, or had more opportunity for growth. And now Radio Centre Ireland is here, we're looking to accelerate. To do that, we're looking for a CEO with a focus on increasing advertising investment and championing radio's unique advantages that make it so effective, flexible and impactful. We need a candidate with the experience, credibility and vision to lead, drive, influence, shape and grow this industry. Someone who will be our voice, representing and promoting radio to commercial partners and agencies alike as a medium that delivers return on investment. If that's you, we want to hear from you. And we know we will, because radio works. Apply now. Visit radiocentreireland.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, 13 minutes past 9 here. A reminder, of course, that our latest Cadbury FC Roadshow is one specifically for Liverpool fans. We're going behind the scenes at Anfield with legendary striker Robbie Fowler. We'll also be joined by Liverpool captain and Irish international Niamh Fahey and former Liverpool midfielder and physio Richie Partridge It's all thanks to Cadbury FC and their club partnerships, granting you behind-the-scenes access at the Premier League's biggest clubs, coming soon to OTB Sports social channels. The Republic of Ireland take on Finland. It's a 4:15 kick-off, and I'm delighted to say Kathleen McNamee is with us this morning. Kathleen, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, guys. Doing good.
This is pressure today, right? Because we played well in 2 big games against big teams in Australia and Sweden. And this is the bit where it has to kick forward and go, OK, we are realistic contenders to qualify from this group. So what level of performance do you expect from Ireland today?
I suppose the main thing I expect them to show that they probably haven't in previous matches is that we are actually capable of scoring. I think we've shown that we're very capable defensively. That performance against Sweden, I thought the criticism from it in some places was harsh, considering the sort of level of team we were up against and the fact that we kind of were the creators of our own demise and the whole thing. But I think what we really need to turn around and show now is that we can get goals. We can take a game by the scruff of the neck and actually put ourselves in a position where we're in control and we're not chasing the whole time. It's obviously incredibly important. Finland are a very capable team. They've already qualified for the Euros for next year. They've had a great history in European competition, and I think that it's going to be tough, but at the end of the day, it's definitely not beyond our reach to get a result.
What areas did the unfair criticism focus on?
I think I saw some ratings and stuff that put a lot of the teams on 4 or 5s, which I thought wasn't entirely fair. I think that we defended incredibly well. We were set up incredibly defensively, obviously, by that 4-5-1 setup that Veerpaw put in place. But I think that we made Sweden look like a lot worse team than they actually were. We didn't let their best players play the sort of football that we expect to see from Sweden. Yes, I think if any criticism was to come, it was probably from our attacking element, which is always something that we have struggled with. But I think that looking at the result we pulled out, it does show what this Ireland team is capable of. It's just unfortunate that once again, the thing that we're struggling on is getting goals and moving forward in that area.
This has been a long-standing problem in all levels of Irish football when it comes down to it. We're always good for the plucky 0-0s, and ideally when we don't score on goals, that's what happens. But is there enough creativity in the team? This comes down to the debate afterwards. I think Karen Duggan was very strong about the role of Katie Mccabe, who in Vera Pauw's system, I don't know, do you believe in Trent Alexander-Arnold's importance because he's in wide positions and so therefore he's able and free to be creative? Or do you think actually you need your best players in the central role and that's where Katie Mccabe should be? I don't know. I don't know enough about the amount of time that these players get on the ball and the positions they get in the ball and the big chances created stat. I'd like to see, though, the Wyscout reports on Katie Mccabe from an Ireland perspective for that. But what's your instinct on how we are using Katie Mccabe at the moment?
I flip-flop on Katie Mccabe, if I'm honest, because I think that we do need her in certain positions against certain opposition like Sweden. I think we do need her in those more defensive all-round roles than we necessarily need her in those completely attacking roles. I thought that for all, again, this criticism comes purely from a place of understanding that Katie Mccabe is one of our best players, but I thought that she was slightly off her game in places in the Sweden match. Her stuff like her set pieces, she was overhitting balls in a way that she doesn't normally. I think in a game like Finland, if there was ever a time to use her in a more attacking position, now is probably the time. I would love to see a bit more from players like Leanne Kiernan. She's been having a great season with Liverpool so far. Obviously her career has been so hampered by injury in the past, but in 3 games she had 4 goals. And when she came on against Sweden, I thought she was really, really positive. Again, Heather Payne as well. Most of the issues with her was the fact that she was that lone person up the top. And I think that she had such amazing pace. She was ahead of her Swedish defence every single time, but she just didn't have that particular skill yet to cut inside and get past them in the way. And she was so alone as well, which didn't help. So if she had someone in support like Katie Mccabe, what could she have actually achieved with those long balls that we were hoofing up to her a lot of the time? So I think if there was any match that we should start playing Katie Mccabe in a more attacking role, this one would be it. But Vera Pauw seems quite determined on playing her in that more back creative role. So it'll be interesting to see what she actually decides to do later on today.
So you would play Mccabe in a more attacking role. Would you start Kiernan as well?
I think so. Like I think we have so few positive goal scoring options in this team, and I think that by playing Katie Mccabe a little bit higher, having Leanne Kiernan there as well, it would at least, like, one of the things that I found really positive out of the Sweden game was the fact that we were so positive in attack. We didn't necessarily have the players to get the scores, but it was the first time that I had seen an Ireland team like consistently attacking throughout a match. There wasn't a point where we were kind of fading back. It was like the 85th minute against the second best team in the world, and we were still attacking really positively. And for me, I thought that was such a good sign of what this Ireland team were trying to do. It was just frustrating that when we were trying to put those attacks in, we didn't necessarily have the players to put the balls up to, or the players that I thought were probably capable at that stage of actually getting us a goal. So I think maybe taking that positivity from an earlier point and putting those sort of players in a more attacking forward role could be really positive for us.
It's not must win because obviously it's very early on in the qualifying group, but we definitely need to draw this game, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of people are saying it's not must win, but it's definitely not like a game we can lose either. I think that this Ireland team will be disappointed if they walk away with a draw. I think we are capable of better. It's so dependent on us unlocking that little thing we have been missing, which is that goal scoring. And we know it's there. I mean, you look at like the Australia game, and admittedly the Australia team was quite experimental and it was a friendly and there's a different atmosphere around the whole thing. But this is a tough game. I mean, you look at what all the Finland players have been saying over the last couple of days. They watched that Sweden match. They know what they're going up against, and they've talked consistently about how hard this is going to be. So they're on edge for it as well. And I think that if ever there was a time to show like what Vera Pauw wanted to do, what this Irish team to make a statement of intent, today is it. And I think that a win is probably the only way that we can really show that.
Yeah. And look, I think that would be kind of a massive coming out party for the team, and a huge amount of pressure that has built would suddenly release. And it feels like we're getting there. I guess that's the disappointment from the own goal, that actually a 0-0 draw against Sweden, backing up the performance against Australia, that's a clear sign of massive progress. And, you know, in one instance, that's undone. That's the frustration of top-level sport.
Yeah, and I suppose the thing is as well, like, we don't know if that goal hadn't have gone in, how that match would have ended up.
Yeah.
It's a frustration of the fact of where it came from. I think, like, I was on with you guys just beforehand, and I said if we got to halftime at 1-0, I would have been incredibly happy. We got to halftime, it was 1-0, and I was so annoyed about the whole thing because of the nature of the goal, and I thought we deserved better. And it's frustrating that once again we feel like the architects of our own demise in the whole situation. If Blackstenius or Jakobsen or someone had got a goal, it probably would have felt fair. It would have felt like they had attacked. They didn't create amazing chances, but they definitely had the better chances of everyone on the night. But the fact that it was something that was kind of poor defending on our part and just a bit of unfortunate mishap as well, it puts a sour taste around the whole result. But hopefully tonight or today is a result that we can get that will help for the rest of the campaign and set us on a good path for the rest of this qualifying period. I know we've talked a lot about this game being must win, but we are also a team that are known for tripping ourselves up at unfortunate places, and today is a must win, but also the other games that come afterwards are as important for us, considering the results we have put in the past, where it has been the lesser teams that have actually tripped us up rather than the games that we have to win.
Yeah, a playoff in this group isn't beyond the bounds of possibility, but it needs a good result today. The goalkeeping issue, obviously, there's a player of the match performance, but has it actually settled down? Is that a one-off? What's your take on that in the long term?
I don't think it's settled down at all. I think you look at Grace Maloney's performances in the WSL and the respect that she is garnering for herself, that she is more than entitled to be in with a shout with that for that number one keeper's position as well. I think I was really impressed with Courtney Brosnan. I thought she showed maturity that we hadn't seen from her before. A calmness as well. I think a lot of the time there was like very major mistakes, but also just generally anytime a ball used to go back towards her, you'd be slightly on edge, whereas as the match progressed, I felt like she became more comfortable and more assertive. There was obviously some really outstanding saves from her, but I don't think it's settled down at all. I think that Grace Maloney and the fact that she's consistently starting in the WSL, the fact that she is quite well respected means that her name will always be in the conversation. So it'll be interesting to see how that conversation goes forward.
All right, Kathleen, give us a prediction for tonight.
I'm going to say 2-1 Ireland.
Well, we'd be pretty happy with that. Kathleen McNamee, thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you.
So that game, as I said, kicks off 4:15 this afternoon. We'll obviously come back to it on the show tomorrow, and the lads will talk about it tonight between 7 and 10 on Off the Ball on News Talk as well. Now, we want to bring you this, the nearly month upon us, so today's the 26th. You've a couple of days to get ready, because Gillette have partnered with Movember to encourage men to talk men's health and to support men as they shave down and embrace a mo. Movember is the leading men's charity changing the face of men's health on a global scale, focusing on mental health and suicide prevention, prostate cancer and testicular cancer. Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, it's your moment. To kick us into Movember, Tommy Rooney has been for a shave down with All-Ireland final opponents Maddie Rowan and Colin McShane. Here's a flavour of that conversation. They discussed the commitment needed to play football at the highest level.
Sometimes, like family, I think, always back you. They always see, you know, they're always. I know my mum and dad, and you know, close family, and they were very, like, whenever I get my injury and stuff, were very, very worried about me and stuff, and you know, because the last few years they've seen good times in terms of, you know, how well I've progressed as a, you know, with the Tyrone setup, and they probably understand. I would say sometimes friends probably see it as a, you know, you have your real close friends, but there's friends there too that probably would say like they wouldn't do it, you know, that sort of way, and like, they're entitled to say that, but they would probably say it wouldn't be for them, it's too much of a commitment. You have other boys, like I know from the club, like they would love to be playing with Tyrone and representing, they have that in them, but I don't know about you, Matty. Definitely you'd have some it's real close that would do anything to play with their county, and then others would just say it's not really for them, like.
Yeah, like everyone obviously would want to play, but like they wouldn't be just ready to give up that commitment. Like it's kind of like the iceberg, like the tip of the iceberg. Like you see, everyone just sees like whatever, thousands of people watch the game, go to the game, and then watch it at home as well. But people just see you coming out, or whatever, playing a game and on the day or whatever. But they don't really see the slogging, the running. You know, the ball can you would be given from your teammates, or you given to another teammate, and you know, they wouldn't see that side of it, the dirty side, and the injuries and stuff, and the challenges mentally it does provide, like. But yeah, and then there is lads who you'd say that absolutely would have the mentality to do it, like, as well. But yeah, no, there's definitely there's obviously friends that'll understand and stuff, like, and at this stage now, I suppose it gets easier as you get older, because they're just used to it, like, whereas back early days when you weren't playing, they're like, oh, what are you wasting your time with this? You know, you're not playing, or you're not whatever, and that's when it would have been at its toughest, like, and I suppose you need to get over that hill.
Yeah, really interesting stuff from Maddie Rowan and Colin McShane in conversation with Tommy Rooney, and you can see that full thing on our social channels. We'll be releasing that in the coming days. It's all part of our involvement with Movember this year. What's your Movember intention, Eoin?
We'll grow a moustache.
Yeah,
I presume is all of our intentions, is it not?
Yeah. How's that going to go for you? You loved your moustache last year.
Yeah.
You refused to shave it down at the end because you were like, no, I'm keeping this.
Yeah, why did we shave it? Well, you didn't shave yours down famously at the end of...
No.
Why did we shave it off at the end? Is it the point not to get a mow and keep it for as long as possible?
Forever and ever.
Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to just be for Movember. It's like a puppy dog is not just for Christmas. That your mow is just for Movember, because that's the That's the thing. It's like, oh, look at this ridiculous facial hair I have. But then you actually like, I really like this ridiculous facial hair I have.
Like, I mean, that's the whole point. It's supposed to be like doing things for charity is supposed to be about us and what we get from it. So, like, I mean, it makes no sense to shave off.
Show us your moles, people. Send in your clean shaven bum fluff moles, whatever it is that you've got. We would like to see them. And we'll certainly bring them to air over the next while. Tomorrow morning from 7:30, we're talking rugby with Keith Wood. Karen Duggan will look back at Ireland against Finland, and we'll also be joined by Davy Fitzgerald. A couple of quick comments for you here. Imagine if Keane got to the end of the season, says Irish Gary 1. Make this happen, Man United, and can then get the Netflix crowd in. It will be Squid Game and football together at last.
That's an outstanding idea, and I think that should be made happen. Apparently Alex Ferguson has already given his seal of approval to Antonio Conte as speculation intensifies, according to the Mirror this morning. It's been a busy all morning with developments on Solskjaer. That there's been clinging on is definitely the theme from this morning.
There's fingernails there, and Spurs are flaky enough that Spurs could come and win 3-4-0, or Spurs could get beaten 3 or 4-0. All of these range of outcomes is available, and then the Atalanta return game, you can win that. Is it City? Does it go Spurs, Atlanta, City? Is that the order?
Yeah, mate. It's Spurs, Atlanta, City.
That's the order.
Yeah. Sorry, this is Alex. I've got completely lulled into something here by the Mirror. This is actually Ferguson speaking in 2017. He said, "Do you see his energy off the pitch? There's a truth saying that a team mirrors the manager, and that's what they've done with him. His team has stayed top of the league for so long. They lost to Arsenal and Liverpool early on, but since then they've been up." So no, Alex Ferguson commented on Conte being an impressed manager in 2017. So
not quite the same thing.
No, but they say his previous endorsement could be key to Conte emerging as United's preferential choice should the axe fall on Solskjaer in the coming weeks.
Can we talk about the problem that is CR7? Asks Shane. Is CR7 a problem? Like,
yes.
Or is it? Why though? Because it's you know what he is. It's like it's almost as if it's a problem because you didn't know what he is. But you bought him, you put him in the team, so you know what's going to happen.
It is a problem in the context of who people are talking about as the next manager. And you talk about Pochettino, for example, and Daniel Harris was talking about Pochettino earlier on, and Pochettino's not working at Paris Saint-Germain because the players he has don't work for the Pochettino system. Ronaldo doesn't work for the Pochettino system.
No, but I think that if Pochettino's not going to come to the end of the season, at that point you're like, oh, Cristiano, your farewell tour, amazing, off you go to...
Back to Sporting.
Exactly. Or America or whatever. Wherever it is you're going.
That would work, for sure. I think Conte could be... Well, maybe not the extent of Pochettino, but I think that there is definitely a case to be made that you look at Conte, you look at Ten Hag, or Pochettino, and there's definitely a world in which he can't survive. Whereas under Zizou, there could be a world in which he's already done this before with Ronaldo, granted at peak Ronaldo, so it's a very different proposition. But yeah, it's there's definitely a conversation to be had there about Ronaldo and what he's bringing, especially without the ball.
Could they not play 3-5-2 and everybody would be a bit better? And actually, maybe that's where Jadon Sancho plays instead of our Wan-Bissaka, and Wan-Bissaka is one of your three.
Yeah, I thought Wan-Bissaka would probably be one of your three alongside Varane and Maguire. And you were saying play Sancho on as a right wing back. Like, I mean, it's
if you've got a manager who knows what they're doing, right? I'm not walking in and going, right,
not sure
3-5-2 today, lads. You can do right wing back, can't you? Come on, you're good. You're good at the football. You've reached this level.
He's 3-4-3 on the right of the front three. I think Sancho, like his dribbling is way down.
The 3-4-3 is so if you're going to play Ronaldo, play him with somebody else up front so that if there is going to be work done, the other person can do a good bit of that work.
Yeah, I think that it's hard to know who those people are in an ideal world before the end of the season. But it does seem bad news for United, regardless of the manager like Greenwood and Ronaldo isn't working.
Can I just also get a moment for why are we not getting more Matic in the team? Whichever of the players who are briefing the media, you kind of lose credibility. You're like, oh, Matic, we're not using him very much. It's like, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the good things that he's done. Keeping Matic around, not a good thing, but not using him after you kept him around.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, why don't we just stick Matic and Mata in the team? See how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, that would, like Conte obviously has that relationship with Matic as well. Maybe he swings it.
Maybe. If the Provincials had not been downgraded under Proposal B, it would have got through. You need more valuable trophies to win. Other than Sam, players like to win trophies as well as play games, says Declan. Again, the marketing job around this was bad because no one would come out and explain you're not losing the Provincial Championships. You're just delinking them from Sam Maguire. So they will still have that trophy. The medal will still be the same, but it's just that actually it might end up being more. I saw like really, really smart people going, oh, this is the end of the Provincials. You're glorified McKenna Cup. It's like it's the opposite of glorified McKenna Cup. There will be no more McKenna Cup. There will be no more of that. You would have had it there would have been a trophy being given away in April, just as the weather comes good. It's springtime, it's Easter. You've got all that kind of renewal bollocks to play on in the papers, like rebirth. There would have been anyway.
A lot of new players.
Chinatown.
Yeah, well, that was. I don't know. I still think that there is that contrast there though between that and also the fact that the provincials have been so bad for so long as well. So the reason why the provincial councils are fearful is because they know that their product hasn't been good.
But it's not just the provincial councils. It's not just the provincial councils.
Yeah, I know it goes beyond that.
Like
of course.
it's like there's loads of people out there who really think that these must be protected forever and ever and ever.
Mm-hmm. And
the Munster Hurling Championship had to be protected, right? But it hasn't been really. Like there was a chance that Kerry were going to end up in the Leinster Hurling Championship alongside Galway. So calling them the Leinster and Munster Hurling Championship is actually bollocks. Mm-hmm. It's a north and south conference or an east and west conference.
Yeah, like they did try to address that before COVID, all right, where Kerry would actually have to get into the Munster Championship to play Championship, and then they're like, this is clearly unfair because the Leinster Championship is the worst team is a little bit weaker. So they've completely done away with that tradition. Of course they have, and like that's led to something fantastic.
And also this like, we're a great organisation, we look out for everybody. Why are the Galway minor teams not allowed to play in Leinster? Why are Galway not getting home games in the Leinster Hurling Championship? It's like all that we're all about growing the game and it's the best for everybody. No you're not. It's factional self-interest, rules, politics. Anyway, last one. Barbalaza says that sums up the United squad. I think the Europa League is beneath them and they aren't playing for the shirt. Last one, sorry, properly. Dahi says Jack Carty is very talented, a real spark of skill and chance taker that can unlock tough defences. His problem, in my humble opinion, is consistency, and that's been his Achilles heel. Give him another 10 caps at international level and see if he gets consistent playing with the best players all the time. Would be interesting to see, but it looks like he's cresting a level of consistency that's really good at the moment, so we'll see. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razor. Sonny Bill Williams was John Duggan's guest on Saturday. We're going to bring you that now. Have a listen to this. It's brilliant.
Well, you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5. Now our next guest has been one of the most versatile sports stars on the planet. Listen to this. An all-black, 58 caps for New Zealand. Twice a World Cup winner in Rugby Union, 2011-2015. A Super League winner with the Chiefs. A twice winner of the Australian NRL Grand Final in Rugby League. An Olympian at Sevens Rugby with New Zealand. And a New Zealand heavyweight boxing champion. Welcome to Off the Ball Saturday, Sonny Bill Williams.
Off the ball. Great to be here, guys. How are you?
How are you getting on, Sonny?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. We have just finished lockdown in Australia, so life's starting to return back to normality. We're waiting on next week when the kids can go back to school. So, yeah, that'll be the real return to freedom.
Good stuff, Sonny. You got a book out. It's called You Can't Stop the Sun from Shining. Really compelling read. Really enjoyed it, Sonny, reading it over the last couple of days. Let's just go back to the start. You grew up in Auckland. And you were of mixed race heritage. You're a Samoan dad and an Australian mother. You didn't have an easy growing up, Sonny. It was a bit of a tough ride for you at the start.
Firstly, I appreciate you taking the time to read it, brother. And I hope you enjoyed the read.
I did, mate. Yeah.
Yes, my childhood. I think just like many other kids, I didn't think it was. At the time, I really enjoyed my childhood. I thought I had a loving upbringing from a loving household. But, the beauty of this book, why it was so therapeutic in it, because it made me understand myself more, made me understand the reason why I strove so hard, psychotic sometimes at some points of my life to make it in the rugby scene and from a sports context. But obviously, I was well equipped to deal with the demands from a sporting context, but I was not able or well equipped to demand, in life as a man off the field.
All I get the sense through the book, reading of Sonny, is that you love training, you love getting the best out of your body. And we saw that through the different codes of rugby. We saw that through boxing, winning that heavyweight championship in New Zealand, league and union. What's the secret? What is the Sonny Bill Williams workout? How have you been able to maximise your body in the last 15, 20 years?
Well, I think, the fear of failure really drove me. I guess not feeling like I belonged, because I came from a mixed family. My dad, I didn't feel like I was too dark enough, and I didn't feel like I was white enough. So I was always feeling like I had to prove myself. And, I've been blessed, alhamdulillah, I've been blessed with God-given talent from a sporting sense. So, I ran with that, and I threw all my eggs in that basket, because if I didn't make it in sport, I didn't feel like I could make it in anything. And it drove me to the heights that I reached at such a young age. Then, I was always searching for that little 1%, whether it's stretching, nutrition, mental game, all of that type of stuff. Always fell into that same bracket where it was, the Mike Tyson mindset, or those, the boxers mindset where they're like, I've got to do this because none of my other opponents are doing it, just for that mental strength. And I think when you grow up like I did with a low self-esteem, it drives you to certain places and certain things to reach certain heights, and it certainly drove me in a sporting context.
So say when you're playing in the World Cups in 11 and 15 for New Zealand, what would be the week-to-week, the day-to-day routine for you, Sonny, physically?
Well, obviously, we're in an age where all the boxes are ticked from a nutrition point of view, from a sport, a rugby performance, high performance point of view, especially in the All Blacks, and Ireland, England, everyone's leading the way in that sense. So there's not too much difference. For me, it was always the little 1%ers that I always, banked my game on, stretching, 30 minutes a night before I'd go to sleep, trying to sleep early, thinking about the opposition, thinking about the players that I would be coming up against. And I really enjoyed playing against the European teams, the Northern Hemisphere teams, because they love that real physical style of play, and that's what I always seem to thrive in. And I think when I look back at my career, when I think about the best rugby that I played, I always seem to play really well in the World Cups, and that was because of that. I believe it was the 1%ers that I always put in extra behind the scenes, the mental approach that I took to the game, and I think that low self-esteem always drove me from a fear point of view, where I was always scared of coming up against, Wales, Ireland, England, because they were such a strong physical force, So, I guess that's where I got those little bit of extra motivation that drove me to the heights that I was able to achieve from a rugby point of view.
Because it's interesting, you were a teenager and you won the NRL, you won the Aussie Rugby League title with the Bulldogs in 2004, and you're talking about that low self-esteem. Would it be fair to say that you went off the rails for a while, Sonny, before you moved to France and moved to Toulon, that, you succumbed to drink, to drugging, to maybe casual relationships, and maybe that sport was in a way a saviour, but also you're trying to find yourself through life. You're a bit of a kid.
100%. I feel like I was just a product of society, brother. I wasn't equipped to deal with a high performance space. In my household growing up, as you know from reading the book, we had no wallpaper on the wall. We came through, or we grew up in a housing commission household. Mum and dad slept in the lounge room, so we had a room. I was never equipped to. I was never sat down by mum and dad and said, like, if you make it in this high performance area, these are the pitfalls that you have to watch out for. A true man is a man that sticks by his own moral compass no matter what. He doesn't just follow the leader, that type of stuff. It was all about survival. It was all about paying the rent that week, you know? So although that struggle drove me to heights and success so early on the sporting field, off the field, I wasn't equipped to deal with life. And I went through a real tough stage. And, you know, writing this book, I knew I needed to be authentic and talk about the things that I'm embarrassed about, talk about the struggles that I have. Because, you know, I understand young boys, young girls, whoever's reading it, a lot of people come from that same struggle, you know, and I'm proud of the man that I see in the mirror today, because I understand that, you know, I put that same effort into being a sportsman. I put that effort into being a better human, a better man. And for so long, I got the manufactured highs from drugs, alcohol, womanizing, treating women like they shouldn't be treated. Then I'd wake up and I'd feel soulless. I'd feel disgusting. But now the beauty of the highs that I'm chasing the natural high where I'm trying to be a better person, better human. And I wake up feeling empowered. And I guess that's my journey. And if I can share a bit of that, how I got to where I am now through trial and error, a lot of trials and a lot of errors, and some people get some goodness from it, then I'll consider this book a success.
It wasn't very popular at the time, but you left in 2008. You just we call it in Ireland, Sonny, doing a legger. You just quit. You quit the Bulldogs and you went to France. You went to Toulon to play Union. But I find when I'm reading the book that this and your embracing of the Islam faith saved you in a way and brought you to a different place in life.
100%. I was so blessed. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was just all encompassing, everything. And now when I look back, it was just the lifestyle that I was living, the party lifestyle, you know, making selfish decisions. But at the same time, I was trying to find myself, you know, I wanted to be better, but I didn't know how, you know, and all of this time the facade was how good I was playing on the field. Oh yeah, he's got everything worked out because he's still one of the best players in the world and I was playing some of the best footy that I'd ever played, you know. But, you know, at that time, I wasn't man enough. I should say I wasn't confident enough in my own self, you know, to go and say, look, this is how I'm feeling. I'm deeply unhappy. I need a change in my life or else, you know, something bad might happen to me. I was really scared of where my life might end up, you know. So the blessing of going to Europe was you go from the bubble of Sydney where everyone knows who you are, the athlete privileges of, you know, being led in here or giving this first or, you know, naturally that affects your ego in a negative way. Whereas when I went to Europe, you're relatively unknown. No one really knows who you are. It's a punch to the ego, but it was a much needed punch that I needed. And meeting, I don't know if you remember in the book, I met a beautiful Tunisian family who I'm still really close with now, a Tunisian Muslim family. I generally spent most of my time with them instead of the mansion that I had over in Toulon. So a lot of these things, these great things for myself, the growth in myself were happening off the field, but then on it, I got to meet a beautiful man named Johnny Wilkinson. And for him to empower me on the field the way that he did, you know, in scrimmages, he'd pull me up and say, what are you seeing, Sonny? We need you with the ball in the hand, Sonny. You know, he'd break the game down so simply for me and he'd just give me time. And for me, that was so empowering for a young, shy player who's trying to learn a new game. You know, here is one of the best players to have ever played the game, talking to me like, you know, I'm on his level. It was really empowering. So those 2 years that I spent in France were great for my journey, not just as a sportsman, but as a person in general, brother.
There's a quote in the book, Sonny, where a coach says to you, and this really jarred with me, you aren't turning Muslim, are you? And this faith obviously very important to you and is shaping your life now. To the extent that there's an explainer of Islam in the book, now nearly 2 billion people around the world identify themselves as Muslim. Did you encounter prejudice because of your faith?
Yes, and, you know, I still do. But for me, I've always been a man of God growing up. Alhamdulillah, I stumbled upon Islam. And Islam, for me, Islam is... I can't tell you how you feel, brother. You know, you can't tell me how I feel deep down. And for me, one of the reasons why I'm so unapologetic to be so proud of my faith and what it's given, it's because it's what it's given me. Quite simply, it's given me happiness. You know, Islam for me gave me the structure, the daily structure to fight the struggles that I have had in this world, in this society. You know, praying 5 times a day, for example, you know, gives me that gratitude, that empathy that I need to be happy in this world. You know, the struggles don't just come once a week. They come every day for myself, or in my journey, that's how I've experienced. So it's really, Islam has really given me the medicine for the scars that I've had, not just the sticky plaster, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. So one of the reasons you turned to union was also the dream of becoming an All Black. So you went down to New Zealand then again, and you spent time with the Chiefs. You won a Super Rugby title with them. You had Bundee Aki as a teammate, so you must have observed his journey with Ireland with interest, Sonny.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bundee. We go way back. We're close mates. You know, and I always knew he was special. I remember in that 2012 season, he was working as a bank teller, I think, and he came in. He was, you know, training trial, or he's just in the wider squad. We did a scrimmage, and he was the number 12 for the opposition. And I thought, I thought, you know, this young fellow, I'll show him. I rush up on him and just, you know, that mental, I guess, you know, just put that mental warfare, so to speak. It means a lot when you're playing, especially against opposition players. So I thought, I'll put it on him. I'll get up in his face, sprint it up. I sprinted up to put it on him, and he did a little in and out on me, made a mad break, set up a training try. But from that day, I knew that he would be something special, and it just so happened to be that the next year I went back to rugby league, and he cemented himself in that starting role that I vacated in 2013, and he was instrumental in them winning the competition. So him going over to Ireland, it was just a matter of time, from my point of view, for him to get to the world-class level that he's got to.
Yeah, you went to the Roosters, didn't you, Sonny? What's your view? What's been the view? Because we have our own view of what the Irish rugby team has been, and we've had a successful decade with Joe Schmidt and winning the Grand Slam and winning Six Nations titles. The World Cup has not been...
Sorry, brother, can you... just 2 seconds, all my kids are just so
no problem.
noisy. Hey, kids, can you be quiet, please?
I think we'll keep. I think we'll keep that bit in, Sonny. I think we'll keep that bit in the interview because it's kind of funny.
Yeah, no worries.
Just on Ireland, the view in New Zealand of Ireland. It took us over 100 years to beat New Zealand, and we did in Chicago, and then we did it again in Dublin. Here, we've had a good decade with Joe Schmidt. We won a Grand Slam, a few Six Nations titles. We haven't been as lucky in the World Cup. What's the view in New Zealand of Irish rugby?
Strong, very strong, and I think. For me, I was there. I witnessed that great game in Dublin when you guys got over us. You know, although I didn't play, I was injured at the time. Just being in Ireland, I remember I had an awesome conversation with a taxi driver. But I think for us as Kiwis, we have that affinity with you people because of the struggles that you guys have faced throughout your history. You know, the famine, I think it was.
Yeah.
You know, you guys are really strong people, strong-willed people, and for me, my personal view on Ireland is I respect you guys tremendously because you guys leave it all out there on the field, but then off the field, you're a gentleman. You guys are gentlemen, so you guys have come a long way in rugby, and I just put it down to that strength in your character, fighting against the odds, all of that type of stuff, and it shows in your rugby. And then you have, obviously, you know. You're the great coach who came from New Zealand, and like many of the coaches have, and he bring that free style, loving play of rugby, and I think it allowed a lot of the athletes that you guys have in your team to express themselves beautifully. None more so than that great try you guys scored down the blind side with that little chip and chase. You know, I think when it comes to World Cups, I know in the last World Cup you guys were very unlucky. I don't know what I was. To be honest, I thought Bundee Aki getting suspended was a big loss for you guys before our game. I knew that it relieved a lot of pressure off us. But I'm a big fan of Ireland, the Irish people, and I've always enjoyed playing Ireland over the years. I love your guys' anthem more than anything.
You should. We'll send you the words if you don't know already. It's an inspiring anthem.
Ireland.
Well, that's Ireland's call. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. The shoulder to shoulder.
Yes.
The offloading. That's what you're known for a lot of the time, Sonny. I think you've always had an approach where you bring flair to rugby, and you don't like the game to be overcoached.
100%. I think for me, the key to the game is the simplicity of it. If I've always, and that's just my opinion. I've always played my best footy when my mind has been cleared and I know my role, the simplicity of it. And I feel like that's the best for, same with players. Great coaches or good coaches are people managers, are motivators, I feel. And the main ingredient is the players. And I think sometimes we get caught up in this coach being this or that coach being that, I've found throughout my career that the best coaches are the ones that can get, the Bundee Akis or whoever you're talking about to play consistently at 90 to 100% of their potential. And that's an art in itself. That's always been my view, and it will always be my view when it comes to the game of rugby union.
You've gone to the Olympics in Rio. You did get injured, but you were an Olympian. You've also boxed, Sonny, so you won the heavyweight championship of New Zealand. How did you find boxing as an individual sport compared to league and union as team sports?
Tough, man. I was crapping myself, and it's still a struggle getting in the ring, but I love it at the same time because of the growth it brings. For me, boxing, I never thought I'd jump in the ring. It was through necessity. Obviously, if you read the book, you understand I was in $1 million debt when I went to
That is mad.
France.
You were on the hook for $1 million. Imagine if you got injured or if your career had ended with a knee injury, something like that. I was thinking to myself.
Well, if you also from reading the book, you understand the activist streak I have in me, and I get that from my mom, so you would understand that. So it was like, all right, I'm doing this. But when it came to the boxing and I had to pay my good mate Chok Mandine back part of it, he said, come jump on the card. I said, oh, well, I need to pay some money back. So it was through necessity, but I lit a fire in myself that I haven't been able to put out. And now at the young age of 36, I've dedicated myself at least for 24 months. Well, my wife has given me 24 months to tick that box because, I've been to the Olympics. I've done everything in both codes. I don't want, you're a long time retired, and I don't want to leave that itch there knowing that I haven't itched it. I always wanted to see how I'd be after 12 months, 24 months, rather than a 6-week camp or a 12-week camp.
So what's the aim, Sonny? Where do you want to go in boxing?
As far as I can go. I'd love to fight up in Europe. I'd love to fight up there. I'd love to fight in Ireland, England, if I can get to that standard. I know where I am in the sport. I know I've got to crawl before I walk. But, anything's possible. I didn't think that I'd, be a 2-time World Cup winning All Black at the start of my career. So, I'm just going to work hard every day and see where it takes me, brother.
You were sparring with Joseph Parker. He was in the dressing room last weekend with Tyson Fury.
Yeah, he was. I sparred with him before he went pro. So he was only a young fella, but we've stayed close over the years, and I'm a big fan of Joe. Big fan of Fury, AJ, White, Usyk. I'm a massive boxing avid boxing fan. So God willing, I'll be able to fight on that level one day. We'll see.
It seems from the book that it's more physically exhausting than anything else you've done boxing.
100%. When I thought Francis Botha, I took the wrong. I jumped in with the approach that okay, he's old. I'm young. I'm naturally fit. I'll be all right. coming off an injury with pec surgery. I only had 2.5 weeks to spar and actually prepare for the fight. And he took me to a place that I've never been before physically. And that 9th and 10th round, it was just by, I guess, intuition that I stayed standing and I finished the fight. I remember after the first round, I went back to the corner and I sat down and I was thinking to myself, man, I'm struggling physically, just from the nervous energy being spent before the fight, all of that type of stuff. So for me, it's all about respecting the sport now and doing my due diligence before I get in the ring.
But what have you found easier to play in your career, league or union?
I think league always came easy for me because I grew up as a league man. But to be honest, I don't think I missed the stepping into the rugby world. I think it was just the reason why I think the rugby traditionalists didn't really like my style of play when I came to the game of rugby union. But I never felt out of place, or I never felt like I couldn't succeed on the rugby union field as well. So it was great to be able to go back after 5 years out of the game and take a more well-rounded, skillful approach to the game of rugby league and succeed in it too. So yeah, it's when I think about the sporting career, I'm really grateful for what I've been able to be a part of out there.
Just in some of
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razor.